Mm.
But
Yeah, I did see yours had a higher resolution, but for whatever reason, it's not picking up in this one. But spend a bit more time troubleshooting if you to get to the bottom of it in the future.
yeah, I don't know
But
how
I've started recording as well, so we're live. Well, not live, but yeah, we're kicking.
how you doing today, Harry?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I'm finally calming down after my coffee. So I, I've been a coffee drinker for most of my life, and it really never had much of an effect on me because I used to smoke a lot of weed, and I've taken a little bit of a took a little bit of a break off the weed, and now the coffee is like shooting up amphetamine or something. It's incredibly overwhelming, and
Wow.
I
Well,
gonna have to quit coffee now just to be grounded, basically.
just slow down and slow down. Maybe I've recently started drinking teas. Trying all the different varieties of teas out there, and I was trying to get onto green tea, and you hear all these good things about green tea, but ultimately I'm back. I'm back with the coffee. It's hard to, but I
Yeah,
just keep it at a low dose caffeine. Try to keep
yeah, that's smart.
a smaller amount of the caffeine in there.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I recently got into tea myself, and it's definitely the way to go. If you need some kind of replacement to just it's not about the effect that it has, it's about the experience of enjoying a nice tasty hot beverage that you can't really escape, and yeah, don't
Yeah, it
really want to
becomes an
stop.
addiction. It becomes like everything else, a pleasure. A pleasure. Once it becomes a pleasure, it's not just like pound down a cup of coffee and go to
No.
work for 10 hours, and then just use it again to get through. It's more like, I like this stimulation, and helps me to think. I don't know about you, but I when I was in college, I didn't like coffee, but I started learning, you know, from reading about how it could help you to have a boost of caffeine before you go into a test. Uh, and ironically, now recently, I'm told that it actually constricts the. This is the odd thing. It constricts the blood flow in the brain to some degree, which you'd think would be the opposite. So it can be negative in time if it's obviously abused. And a lot of people here in the U.S. are abusing the hell out of caffeine. It's like we can't get the cocaine and all the other drugs that we want. Just drink a whole shit ton of caffeine. They're not usually coffee. They're getting it from these energy drinks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The
So
energy
energy
drinks,
drink,
yeah.
200 milligrams of caffeine in one
Yeah.
drink. Pound that down. Drink three of those, man. You're sky high and can actually kill you. So
Yeah, it's incredible, and they become rituals as well. It starts off with "I want energy," but it ends up becoming a ritual, and our rituals are our religion. The things we do every day are our religion, and it's, we create these rituals, and they become our cycles of life. And the best thing for me is just disrupting those cycles all the time, swapping elements out and mixing it up a bit, and going back and forth without being kind of locked into one or the other. And coffee is definitely one of those things I love so much. It brings me to another place. Smell, the experience of it, it's divine. It's divine. But
same here.
I'm yeah. When you have um, a lot of energy already, that's when it becomes a problem because you're not drinking it for any other reason except for the experience. And I've had
Yeah,
to kind of
it's weird.
I've
It's
put a
weird
piece
because
of
you
paper on my
love.
coffee machine, and it's got a big heart on it with an electricity lightning bolt, and it's like no more. It says no more. So what were you saying?
Well, it's like when you feel good. When you don't feel good, like right now, I'm sick. So if I have coffee, it's the whole idea is, man, maybe this will make me feel better. and often
Mm.
it works. That's one of the good things about coffee and tea when you're sick. It really does help you get through. But when you already feel great and you're like, I feel so good, I want this to continue, or I want to make it even better, and reach for the drug. It would have been the same thing with cocaine or anything else. Oh, this is a great day. Let's get loaded. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, let's just enhance that experience to the next level type of a thing. And it holds true with coffee too. But coffee has an
Absolutely.
interesting history within like scholarly circles here in the United States, probably England and everywhere else too, where it was like used originally with the coffee houses being sort of the places where a lot of the great thinkers gathered. You know, you have the whole Irish tradition of gathering in the pub, and we do
Hmm.
that too, of course. You got to get on both
Yep.
sides of that deal, you know. But like in the morning, gather in the coffee shops and talk shit. In the evening, gather in the pub and talk shit, type of a deal, you know.
Oh, and that's I'm glad you brought that up because I've got a I've had a long-standing realization that due to the way suburbia has been constructed, it's basically removed that cafe or pub community center out of the equation because the only way you're going to get there is with a car, basically. And so they have a name for those type of places. They're called a third place. At least that's what one person coined it as. You know, you've got your work and you've got your home life, but then you have this third place, and that's where people used to go, well, a cafe or a pub or whatever, and actually have a social life outside of their cyclical loop, basically. And that third place was like the grounding mechanism for uh, social relationships and to expand your relationships and whatnot outside your normal cycle. And that's what I've noticed in my life because I don't drink alcohol. I don't have a third place. There's nowhere for me to really go, man. And that's always kind of been on the back of my mind, like, how, how are we going to get a third place back when the suburbs are structured this way? You know how, and that's something I've been contemplating for a while, like as a dream almost. Like, how can we bring third places back to society again when
You
it's
can make an
structured?
argument. You can make an argument that they took over coffee houses with the whole Starbucks
Mm-hmm.
thing, and making a superior coffee is great. I mean, I loved it, but I would get together and play chess, get together and with my friends in the groups. But after a while, you get sidelong glances from the others, and it's become it has its own. It's already got its political narrative built in now, so you no longer. It's not a free zone anymore. I knew that as soon as when the COVID thing happened, and I went to try to go to Starbucks, and they were the most anal retentive, angry uh, group of people on earth, enforcing those rules more harder than any other establishment. And at that time, they were so rude to me that I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to go to Starbucks again. It took years by the time I finally went to a Starbucks again,
Yeah.
and just dropped by. I just started making on my own. I got like all these multiple methods of brewing coffee, and to try to see if I can get the best. You know, all these experimentations, like a coffee lab in there, really.
Yep.
So I'll be like trying to do pour overs and see if I can get it right. It's so fucking hard to do. And then I'll be like, well, let's just go back to the French press. And then, you know what? We just recently got a percolator to experiment with that after all this time of like an ancient method. But I've tried the cowboy coffee where you just boil it in a pot. We've tried,
Yeah.
you know, we often have an instant for when like I had to start getting a really good quality instant coffee for when the times when I make a pour overs or whatever and they turn out like shit. It turns out so bad. Like, geez, I'm not going to drink that. Buy the
Yeah.
best coffee, put all the energy into it, and it comes out terrible. And you know they're making a better coffee with a freaking instant, just push of a button. But
Yep.
I didn't want all that plastic. Most of the coffee makers are full of plastics, so But some of the instant, you can find a decent instant if you really need it. And then I have like 20 different varieties of bags of organic tea that I bought, trying to think I'm going to switch to tea, but I can never quite totally. I'll just like have tea for a while, and then I'll go back to coffee.
It's like a gym membership.
Yeah, it's a whole damn lifestyle, dude. I put the same energy that I
Yeah.
did when it was. I don't drink anymore, so it's been years. But oh man, I loved beer, and I was all about the beer. I would travel around and do beer tours, and you go and I would talk to the brewmeister, and I would do all sorts of. It was a hobby. It was a hobby and an interest, just loving beer. So
Yeah.
now I have to channel that energy into something else. So now it's
But
caffeine.
you kind of, if you're doing anything, you do want to know what the best is, right? And you
Oh
want to
yeah.
take care of yourself. I want the best for myself, and yeah, that's what happens with our rabbit holes is they end up being they become lifestyles in a way because you invest so much in them. Like I recently got the coffee machine and a fresh bean grinder and everything, and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I had coffee any other way.
Oh yeah.
But now I'm seeing it's a very short-lived lifestyle because it's not sustainable for me health-wise. Mm.
Well, we could try to retake the political zones in the coffee shops, but it wouldn't be easy. But yeah, we used to have chess club meetings in Starbucks,
Mm.
and we used to have when it first became popular, and there were so many of them, and it was like up in Prescott, there's a big, huge. I'm near Prescott, and up Arizona, and there was a big, huge coffee shop with right next to a blazing fireplace, a full size stone fireplace, really nice, and just had a really cool ambiance and atmosphere. And there's a meeting of a writers club, mystery
Wow.
writers club, where you could go in if you're interested. Because I'm a little bit of a writer. I still fantasize about writing, and we could do
Awesome.
with people of all ages. It wasn't political, because when you're writing books, you're not supposed to be fucking political. I mean,
Yeah.
this is not my goal, is to preach a political message or to reach people and convince them of something. And it's hard with my groups because I have these three groups right now. I'm probably going to delete them again. It's because I always end up with people politically making stances within the group. We'll start off talking on the same wavelength, like you and I. We'll be talking about all different types of, any topic is open.
Yeah.
But then when you become a justice warrior within that social circle, like I have to hate, you have to agree with me, and we all hate Israel, or we all hate something politically, and if you say anything that's to the contrary, they get offended because
Yeah.
they've been so. It happens. It happens to all of us. I'm not diminishing these people.
Absolutely.
We're all susceptible. It's just that
Totally.
those relationships are not real, and
Yeah.
you have no actual connection to those relationships. Those are thoughts that have been given to you. People
Yep.
are magnetically inclined to have various opinions, and when that political movement ends, what happens to you then? It's just like your favorite sport team, your favorite sports team. People make it about these things that they like or they agree with, and then they identify with it. And then there comes eventual pain when they find out not only were they wrong, but that movement doesn't give a fuck about you at all.
Right.
If
Right.
anything, they treated you like sheep. So the same people that we're here talking about, we complain about religion and how they make sheep of us, treat us like fish. They're fishing for us. We're the fish,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And reeled us in, and now we're on board with their religion. And when you walk away from that religion, they don't care. They're just fine without you.
Yeah.
The sports teams never cared about you in the first place. The other fans, it's like a way of getting together with fellow thinkers, like let's say you and I, having coffee together, and it lasts for a while when people are able to engage freely, but soon they become politicized at some point, and now we've got to take part in the revolution. That's in America.
Yeah.
That is actually where they fomented these revolutions in ale houses and in coffee houses. And and that was the first one was over tea, for Christ's sake. We want
Yeah.
our fucking drugs. We ain't
Mhm.
gonna take, nobody's gonna control our drugs type of attitude.
Yeah.
That was the attitude, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
America, where do most of the drugs come from? Look at South America, the
Mhm.
powerful, intelligent plants that are down there. And we let these fuckers come in and take control of it. And now they decide who can have any of it and they control it completely. You know what I'm saying? So it's,
Yeah, absolutely. And these things, this polarization is impossible to avoid so long as we interact, exist within a society, because a lot of these, it's like a rotating door. All of these, call them like, they're ideologies, but they're essentially cults in a way. But it's just,
mm-hmm.
it's like a rotating door policy. So if you leave the cult, 5 more people are coming in. They don't need you. You're not a person to them, in the same way that you think of yourself. And so when people are speaking and advocating and evangelizing on behalf of these issues, they don't really see that aspect of it. And so it's only after you leave the cult that you really get to see that. And like what you're talking about with the coffee shop, having, open interaction with other creatives without or just having that in general, that's what I've realized, is that doesn't really exist anymore. And pretty much all the people I'm friends with are online friends. I don't even really hang out with anyone in real life anymore. You know what I mean? Like, besides some family members of my flatmate. And that's what I'm kind of realizing, is idealizing myself about, oh, let's get third places going again, is almost like trying to fight against a tide that is so powerful. It's like a tidal wave, and there is no fighting that in a way, because what I can see is our whole society is being channeled into this isolated environment where our only interactions are online, and it seems to be only going to be getting worse from here. And probably a lot of us have been in this state already for a few years, so we're already ahead of it and we're sick of it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
there's a deep distaste for this online world that we're all living in now. But I also can see that it's beyond my power to stop that from happening. And if I'm being honest, it's going to get worse. And for me, instead of trying to deny that reality, I'm more focused on, where is this leading, everyone? Why is it happening? And why is it a good thing? Because if I'm always thinking about, like, there's this, the system is making this happen to make us miserable and all that. Yeah, but like, what's the spiritual reason for this? What good can come from this? And that's where my eyes are really focused on, is that actually I noticed that when I was forced into isolation, I had to reevaluate everything, and I didn't have anyone to bounce it off. And it was through that it was like a put me in a cocoon in a way. But what happens in cocoons is you go through metamorphosis, and that's exactly what's taking place for all of us in a way, through these major adaptations that are taking place. It's forcing us all to evolve. And I see eventually, if the rug gets pulled out from underneath us, that's actually the best thing that's going to happen, because it's the rug that most of us have been clinging to the whole time as a security blanket. And so at some stage, losing the security blanket's the best thing that can happen to the child, because then they're forced to go, okay, actually, I'm pretty fine without this blanket after all. Why was I crying? And yeah.
Yeah, that's good. You made really good points there, and I agree. It's there's this desire for social connections, and it's part of it is a matter of communication, just a communication, developing communication abilities and skills to interact with others, and then where is that supposed to take us? Is it truly meant for us to just utilize the communication in order to convince and manipulate the
Right.
population? Is it our job to help one another in some way? Is that the case? Because as a young person, I was receptive. Young people are receptive to such. It's lonely. Life is lonely, and when you're young, I think you're looking for the answers and to find what are we supposed to be doing with our lives, and some sort of a map. As you mentioned,
Mhm.
I keep hearing this term map for reality lately from various sources, but we're looking for something to some sort of direction. You know, in a video game, we know we're supposed to beat the boss and get to the next level and get somewhere, but life doesn't operate like that. We don't know really what we're meant to do when it comes to action. So that's a problem. That's a problem for most of us because we've learned to be action oriented to the point that, like, oh, when you do something, whenever I do something, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have
You got
said
to.
that. I should have done this. Why didn't I
Mhm.
do this? Oh, at this period of time, someone over here needed me and I wasn't there for them. I should have recognized that I needed to be there for them at that time so they didn't commit suicide or whatever may have happened. I'm just making examples. But so I've worked to try to fix that. Like the times when I'm to try to make sure I don't do anything I'm going to regret and try to make sure that I'm going to be there when someone needs me. But it like drags you all over the place and fractures the mind trying to imagine yourself as this sort of a do-gooder hero sort of a character, which is what is that? It's a composite of what we've been taught of these ideas about what it is to be a good person, sort of a thing.
Yeah. And we're trying to live, a lot of the time, because of our youthful innocence, we're living up to an image that someone else has created, and we're striving towards that as our ideal, which is noble. I mean, I think that happens to pretty much all of us, right? We all see ourselves as the hero. It's just that it comes to a point where you realize that because of that striving for goodness, we've essentially been hiding from ourselves our own badness, and as a result it creates this like delusional understanding of what and who we are. And it's only natural, it's like the most innocent, loving thing that could happen. It happens organically to everyone. I don't know anyone who doesn't think themselves to be a good person. And but there's so many elements to this, because like we're talking about intentions. The intentions are good. You always have good intentions for yourself, and even if you're under an illusion or if you're brainwashed and you think and your intention is to help people, and you're using this information you've learned to try to share that view with those other people, to help them, to save them ultimately. I'm only trying to save you, kind of thing. Just adopt my view in a way, or just take on this information. The intention is so good, but we're just blind to our own. we can't really see the overall picture. We're just like tunnel visioned essentially for a lot of our lives. But this is better than not expressing yourself at all. And this is the most important thing, because if we're all cut off socially, right, what I've noticed in myself is that I've had a very difficult time expressing my own ideas to other people because because um, they're not really accepted a lot of the time, and it causes a rejection and a pain, and that rejection makes you think that it's not safe to express yourself. And when you amplify that with like not having anyone in your real life, everything's online, then anytime you're speaking to someone else, usually they're looking at you like you're a piece of content. And everything you're saying, it's gone from this human relationship into like this, you're just a piece of content, and they read your message and then they just roll on to the next thing, like, and I'm not saying that's just other people. That's, I've noticed in myself as well. It's kind of like the adaptation that's taking place when we're always consuming content, that we're just like giving a love heart and an uptick emoji and a thumbs up emoji to tell people that we see them, but we're not really seeing them. We're like, oh yeah, you said that, and then we just move on with our life. And I think that's the shift that's happening. There's like way less honest engagement, way less deep engagement, and it might even have to do with our attention spans as well. Just not being capable anymore of following through, or even interest, right? Because you got to think about it. If you're overloaded with all this awesome content all the time, and then your friend comes into your life with this mundane shit, like, you're not going to be as interested in that as you were the cat video that you're watching just before. It's kind of
Well, that's a good example, Bouquet.
yeah.
That's a great example about the different wavelengths that everyone's on, the different frequency or whatever everyone's into, and they want to share something with someone else. And my heart's in it to try to. I mean, I've theorized that having a group of friends, let's say, a social circle, that you could, because I didn't have that as a young person, and I didn't have it in my 20s or 30s even. So later on, I decided, well, I've been shy and introverted long enough. I went out and started building, like getting involved with social groups. I didn't agree with these groups. I wasn't like going there because I want to become your acolyte, or I didn't want to join with the Elks Lodge or the Masons or all these other groups. But I was willing to go and drink with them and get to know them.
Yeah.
And I saw good men in there, and I saw manipulators sometimes. And just like you would if you go to church, you start making friends in the Christian church. You go anywhere, any of the groups, even Satanists. I mean, it's all the same. There's no difference.
Yeah.
And so
No.
the truth about it is, they don't think they're evil. The other guys say those guys are evil, and they're all enemies with one another. But I'm not their enemy, and I don't want to play the enemy game and the hate game with different groups. But my heart is in the idea of the individual, and being able to form actual real connection to where there could be, maybe it's a mirroring concept. Maybe there's like, you look into another person's eyes, not because you just want to fuck them, not because it's a sexual or, the other reasons that people do stuff all the time, but to see if you can learn. I'm looking for what's in the depth of the soul. You know what I'm saying? And so the idea that there's an idea that, well, we could be our own psychologists. Why should we need to have to hire a psychiatrist or a psychologist so that they can keep us emotionally viable for survival because we're teetering on the brink and we need drugs just to get through it. And we need, what I found is my addiction more will be toward friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times I was the same with my family members. The feeling of connection to my father, no matter what he was doing, no matter what sort of bad things my parents were doing. At a very young age, they were all I had, so I had to forgive them. You have no choice. You're living with it every day, whatever these things might be. And that sort of a training, I think, is part of what happens with some of these, trauma bonding type of a deal. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so that shows me that, like, it gave me I guess it gave me a proclivity toward bonding with the people that are some of the least likable people, some of the people that I see that are alone, and they're like, nobody seems to connect with them, and
Yeah.
they're struggling, and I'm like, wonder why, and I'll try to go. And often what I find is there's a reason that there's a reason that they're in that situation. And in many cases, a lot of people find them to be toxic, and they do have sometimes a toxic effect. And you know you have I always forget that people will judge you based on who your friends are. So I've been friends with people that I shouldn't have many times because those people went on to do certain things that were bad. And so then you've got a name connection to that person. It's not to the level of like we see in the news with a, it's not, we're not important people. So you're not going to hear Epstein connections, you know what I'm saying? But like the
Yeah,
people
yeah.
I've connected with in my life that were in my family, a lot of them, there was a lot of criminality going on, you know?
Oh,
And that was like,
that's my background as well.
okay, so I had to make, but I didn't fit. I never fit in with it.
Hmm.
And so I was not really included because I didn't fit in. I didn't. So, and then later you go on your life and you have supposed to, when you tell, let's say you meet a beautiful girl and you want to get with her and she starts asking questions about yourself and she wants to meet your family and things like that. Like, I couldn't bring them home to my house because it would ruin it. You know what I'm saying? I can't bring them around my family. I don't trust my fucking family. I like you.
Yeah,
I like you. My
yeah,
family,
yeah.
I don't, but I couldn't tell
Yeah,
them that. And
yeah,
you can't tell when you go to meet the girl's parents, you can't tell them, hey, I come from a family, a crime family. You know, you
yeah,
can't do that.
yeah,
That's gonna ruin the whole thing. Like they're
yeah,
not gonna want their daughter with you, type of thing. You know what I mean? So that those kind of things can shape, even though this is all ancient history, mythology. It's my mythology, and so I tried to understand it over the years. At first, I was just reacting
yeah,
with there's all sorts of pain and feelings of trying to understand why did this have to happen to me, type of thing, you know.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it forges a certain personality. It creates a certain individual.
Hmm.
Apparently, these are the individuals we were meant to become. That's the only way I can look at it. So this is how we
Yeah,
were meant to we were meant to have that experience so that we can have a certain particular uh, outlook. And so some of my behaviors, like just now before I got on here, I was debating deleting uh, my other social group, the one I invited to you too, because there's this constant dynamic of it's taking my time and attention to try to placate personalities and to try to keep them happy, and they inevitably end up fighting with one another, and
yeah,
then they demanding me to take to like I'm supposed to mediate all that, and
yeah,
I've tried it multiple times and it never works. One or the other, no matter what I do with them, they always end up taking off angry about like I was supposed to stick up for you over here, and this other one I was supposed to. Why didn't I stick up for this other person? Like, geez, can't you guys relax? These are opinions, you know.
yeah, yeah.
These
That's
are
right.
we're allowed to have our opinions and talk them out or whatever. So maybe the group dynamic isn't the answer. Is where I'm getting to, like, you know.
Yeah, it's certainly it offers a lot of value in other ways for you to make these realizations. You know, you kind of needed that group to actually make these realizations. So in a way, it is valuable where you are to take you to where you're going next. And I think each group acts as a kind of stepping stone in that way, or you know, I I have a very difficult time interacting with groups as well because of the exact same thing you've stated, where they're just these wars are always taking place, and the wars are just repetitions of stuff that's happening on the societal level. They're echoes, and there's no winning that war because of that. Because you're battling an echo. What are you going to win by being right? You're not going to win anything. And actually, the person who you're talking to is probably going to be totally just offended by the fact that you disagree with them, that they don't even listen to you at all. So you could have the most well-meaning, structured responses that are reasonable and loving, and you spend an hour, you might write, you might communicate for an hour back and forth. But what I notice is that actually we're not talking to each other, we're talking at each other, and we're not really getting anywhere together. We're just still two people in two different directions, and nothing's really changing. And there is that kind of lesson in futility to determine, why am I trying to guide them to clarity in a way as well, and it's not so much that we should stop doing it. It's just that we should do it with different outcomes in mind, maybe. And with that, we'll be less invested in the dramatic outcomes that take place if it doesn't go our way. And the idea of deletion, and I battle this all the time, man. To just get the fuck out of there, because that is usually the fastest way to solve a problem. You just walk the fuck away. But at the same time, there's a certain level of pain that is beneficial, and we can use that pain as a fire to kind of push us forward to overcome that very thing that's actually creating that pressure within ourselves. And I'll just use a quick example. Our recording the other day fucked up, and I take feedback from the universe very seriously. And when something doesn't go right, to me, it usually means Mama doesn't want me doing this thing, right? And then I do have kind of a conflict going on, just checking, what was I saying? Am I revealing secrets that I shouldn't be talking about, or something like that, and it really makes me assess myself. And that actually led to probably the hardest day I've had in a long time yesterday, where I just spent the whole day in a just deep painful contemplation about whether I should even be speaking publicly on anything at all. And it wasn't until late in the night that all of that accumulated pain was transmuted into poetry. And I've probably written the best song I'm ever going to fucking write. Awesome. All from that fuel that came through.
All right. And that's good to hear, bro.
And I feel absolutely over the moon with the fact that I had to go through that pain to realize that it's not what I thought it was. It's not because Mama doesn't want me to speak. It's just you're still in a cocoon, and if you try to get out too early, you're gonna die. Basically, your wings aren't ready, And so I'm almost riding myself out of the cocoon with this song.
Dude, you made a good point there with the idea that feeling pain. Often I'll feel a little micro depression. I mean, I was very familiar with depression when I was young, very serious long-term depression that didn't go away. It didn't give me any peace for years. So these days I feel like I've made myself almost immune to that. So I'm always surprised when I get depressed at all these days. But when I do, it's usually something about something like this, like a video or something, feeling like I need to accomplish something. And then now my accomplishment is nothing. It's gone. It was washed away, or it was just another fail, or it was worthless. I've even had people tell me, I'll be like, well, we should save this conversation. This is a good conversation. And a friend told me, no, it's not worth anything. And I thought about that. I wondered, that hurt my feelings to think that our conversation wouldn't be worth anything. But at the same time, now when I think about it, it's like, would we be having this conversation if we weren't recording it, if we weren't making a podcast? I've had a lot of conversations with people that wouldn't have spoken to me if it wasn't for the fact that they knew that it was going to be published as a podcast. People want to people want people want to be known and recognized, and there's a desire to be accepted, maybe, and to have friends and things like that, based upon who we are individually, and like the idea that others might see value in you. If you've ever been told that you're not valuable, if the life has shown you that you're not valued, as it has many times for me, I realize this. We're all facing this a lot of times. Not all of us. Some people are incredibly aware of their value. Insanely aware of their own value. Some people, others aren't. We're all wired differently. So this idea that we might not be having the conversation at all, we wouldn't have even met if we hadn't done some sort of public forum. That kind of gives me the impression that it's not a wrong thing to do. I could be sitting alone in a coffee shop somewhere, keeping it to myself and not interacting. But when I do go to a coffee shop now, when I do, uh, I got over my shyness and all that stuff over the years because I realized that people are delighted to have someone talk to them. So when I go into the coffee shop now, I'll talk loudly to everyone around. And next thing I know, I got 3, 4 people that keep looking up from their books and keep on looking, and they'll want to come and talk. People want to engage, and you can't normally, the problem is that we get routed into the same conversations that the public is having with the dynamics with the news, and it could be the wars, the rumors of wars, or it could be just about anything. But it's a lot of it's politics. It dominates. People lose their friends. I've lost my friends over time because of politics. I thought the loyalty was to one another, not to the fucking politics. Don't work. Yeah. These are people who don't even work in politics, don't get paid. They're not writing books or treatises or anything like that. They're just people. Why allow ourselves to be completely co-opted by other people's politics? And then a lot of it is this whole justice warrior mentality, and the idea that we're gonna, if you have the wrong opinion, well, you may as well have been a Nazi or something. Your opinion makes you, it has devolved you into somebody I don't have to care about anymore. I can wash my hands from that relationship because they disappear from my radar, except I can label them as bad. They're criminals against my mindset type of a deal. So I see it all the time with people. I've hung out with the communists. I've done lots of stuff with the communists. I love a lot of the good things in society are communal things. This is the desire for the group in the first place. You spend time there, eventually you find that these are some of the unhappiest people on earth. And I don't know why, but they're so unhappy and judgmental these days. Maybe it's always been like that in Europe and other places, but in America, we didn't experience it as much. But I see happier people in some of the faith-based systems that I've come out of, like Christianity. I see a lot of the happy sort of patriotic people waving flags and just they're not necessarily cognizant of the writings of Nietzsche or, you know, any of the other. They're not pondering philosophy, and they're not
No.
trying to find the beginning of creation and the Mesopotamian mythology. Uh, but they're happy, and that's an important aspect to your life, is to try to find a combination of all this where you can somehow be you can have some degree of learning and actually have these interests and indulge these interests, maybe write books about it, do something with it. But arguing it with one another is not going to get us very far.
No. No.
They're doing the same thing now with mythology that they did with politics. Like, you say the wrong thing, we were talking about mythology, someone wants to correct you.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. They want to force you into their own camp, like
Yeah.
whatever. And it's usually the forces that are doing it the hardest are the ones that are either the mainstream forces behind it, the same ones that are guiding the collegiate curriculums. And they create false revolutions that are fomented right there, pretending that it's the students that are, we're just coming into our own and realizing the truth. And we naturally want to have a revolution against the old way of doing things. But
Yeah.
they're being conned. Like every generation is conned in the same way, but the same controllers, you know,
Yeah.
in 30 years, they end up in the same point, looking back and saying, geez, look at that new group of people, how they're being manipulated. How
Yeah.
can we
Yeah.
reach them? We can't reach them because every source that they're listening to from school and everywhere else is intentionally trying to turn them away from family connections and
Yeah.
everything else. So
Yeah. Like with that, the mask always changes, but the structure remains the same, and that's how we get to cycle through these things, no matter what's happening with our technology or our society. They're repeating the same things, and I think it's got to do with. I've just taken a lot of notes because what you said. Everything you said was awesome. Like when talking about, you know, this knowing and correcting other people, what happens is because when we find the knowledge originally, it brings a sense of perceived order to our chaos. And we use this knowledge as an ordering structure. And then when we see people drawing outside the lines or breaking the rules of that particular school of thought, you got to correct them because they're bringing disorder to your order, and they're actually attacking your perceived state of order within yourself. But the root of the problem here is trying to obtain order through knowledge. And that's the trick that's being played on everyone. And that's why the mask of knowledge can always be updated to something new, forever tending to the symptom of disorder and chaos. And as long as people can't see that the knowledge itself is providing a false order, it's not true order, then the cycle will just continue repeating. And you talked about like leftists, for example, are some of the most unhappy people. And at some point in my life, I was left and ideological and all that as well. And I understand why that was the case, is because I was seeking to create order in a very disordered world, in a disordered society, in a disordered culture, um, spiritually dead, and it was trying to use these ideologies as if they were solutions, but they're just masks of knowledge. And so,
mm,
as we talked about in our last conversation, the identity is adopted, and whatever the cause of that identity was becomes the controlling foundation stone for it. So leftists, they're good-hearted, idealistic people because they want to live in a good world, in a good society with good order, and they're clinging on to these ideologies as an external solution to that problem. And it comes out of a good place because there is disorder. What we're talking about with not feeling valued. No, we've been taken out of our, you know, communities where you actually are valued. Everyone is valued when you're in a community of 200 people. But when you've pulled everyone out of that system and put them all into generic roles, nameless roles, faceless roles, interacting with colleagues that you don't know, that don't live in your community, and then you spend most of your waking life in these jobs with people who aren't your community, and then you leave there, you go to a different community where no one really knows who you are, and then you go to a family that's probably totally disconnected and spread all over the country, and so we don't feel valued. But we are simply not in the role that would show us that we're valuable. And that's this fragmentation everywhere that I see. And I think a reason why those happy clappy Christians are happy is because a lot of them are family orientated, community orientated. They do feel valued. They have people in their life who know who they are, and they know what type of person they are, and they're not like walking out on each other or like in online communities where they're disconnecting. But those guys are like the last normal people, basically, where they actually have normal family orientated lives. And that might be a reason why they're a lot happier in that sense, because they're still kind of in that Dunbar kind of community relationship where they feel like their life has purpose. But on the other side, the leftists are in a reactionary movement because there is total injustice taking place across the entire system, right? And so they're fully justified in feeling the way they feel and fully justified in adopting the ideology. The confusion is that the ideology is a tool of the very system that's creating the injustice itself. And that's why you can see this transition that's happened where the system's trying to tell them that, leftists used to be very tolerant people, freedom-loving people, but the system has tried to explain to them that you're not in control of this identity by flipping them and turning them into dehumanizing, kill anti-vaxxers, that kind of thing. Like, they've turned them into monsters because it's not the people who are monsters, it's the ideology that's the monster. And it's not within their control. And as a result, the left turned into the extremists in the last 3 years. And the system's wondering if any of them are going to notice, but they don't notice. And so you can't actually say the justice warrior is a fixed ideology. It's really being controlled by the society's circumstances, which are always adapting in a sense. And so,
I can agree with you. It does turn us. It can, if we allow the system to, it can turn us into monstrous. It can turn our behavior rather monstrous. Our judgmentalism becomes far too extreme. It would be the same way as if you were in a religion that judges you for every mistake you make and condemns you to hell. They take up the same mentality for their cause. I see it within the atheist groups that I used to hang out with. I see it within, particularly, it's very bad in, like, if you ever worked in these positions in lots of, I've worked in lots of different companies and different types of jobs. And the ones that have the best social netting, the ones that have everything that everyone says they want, the very best, medical, the very best. Everybody is equal. The more equal pay for everyone, the more everything's supposedly equality. Equality is supposed to be ruling in these things. They have the best programs for sexist to make sure there's no. I mean, you get to go to lots of classes to make sure that no one says an inappropriate word, to make sure that you know if anybody does or says anything that's inappropriate, that person's going to be fired. These types of situations. Since having worked in a lot of these types of situations, I found quickly that, I mean, I had no problem because I didn't do any of those things, but it was used as a weapon against everyone. So it was weaponized.
Mm-hmm.
So you had these angry people constantly looking to try to, their method of getting ahead instead of relying upon hard work and excellence of their behavior and their ethics. It was it was often like warfare, political warfare within groups that are supposed to be
Yeah.
out there trying to look for the best for us. Some of them were so incredibly bad. Their behavior was so incredibly bad. And the method they used to justify it was so pathetic that
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't stay in the environment. I couldn't stay in that environment because it was all bullshit, you
Yeah.
know, and that's what I find at the heart of most situations. You could have a beautiful congregation of really good people in any kind of church situation. You can have a lot of wonderful people, some of the best people. And you find out when you get close to the heart of the organization, if you stay long enough, that the good people are actually the ones that are being harnessed. They're the ones being yoked and made into the oxen to pull the plow for these shit bags at the top. These aren't
Mm-hmm.
good people. They don't actually believe what they're teaching. They they're getting they're getting all their notoriety and their riches. They're deriving their livelihood from catching these fish and essentially like creating a raft of these fish to ride upon, like when like a god, you know, to sit
Mm-hmm.
upon this raft of people that are so much better than them. But these people believe that these people are giving them the conduit to God and
Mm-hmm.
providing them something. And usually the thing that they love is one another.
Yeah.
The thing that the people really end up loving is one another. So they see the good in one another and they believe they're in a good place. That's sort of what happens. They get drawn in, and it happens to happen to me many times. It's happened to my family, and I'm sure it's happened to you. So we get drawn in and find that bond with one another, which is what we desire ultimately. That sort of
Yeah.
some kind of a family or some kind of a meaning to our a social connection that we wanted that we haven't had. But ultimately, the driver of it is very often driving us off a cliff, or we're
Yeah.
driving us to our grave, or just feeding off of us
Yeah.
like a parasite.
Because like when we're talking about the value system, all these other avenues that used to give us value have disappeared. The only ones remaining are the ones that are feeding into these masks that are image-based ideologies. And so even the happy clappy Christians, right? If you get to know them, they're probably the most depressed people you fucking can meet as well. So underneath the mask, there's always the true person. And so I think the real value comes when you can truly be yourself. And that means being open to going against people's expectations of their projections of you and all this. Because like when you're around any kind of group, um, they're, they're, everyone's striving for perfection. And if there's a group-based ideology or image that people are striving towards, then that makes everyone insecure in their true self, and they're always trying to overcompensate that with the image, and that creates even in disingenuous relationships. They're not real relationships. They're masks relating to other masks, which are just idealistic projections, basically. But no one's really communicating on the true level. They're just communicating through the masks themselves. And so as a result, everyone's love and light in the public, but they've got these festering shadows that are actually consuming them when they in the rest of their life, you know, and that shadow only makes them want value more to be extracted from the mask to overcompensate for that.
Well, I agree with you. This mask thing is a great notion that you have, and I just want to interject that when it comes to the religion versus, let's say, the politics, one of the things that I think the religion gets right is the focus on an individual. So even though they may be just fishing these individuals, at least they take the time to give attention and love and put their hands on the person and try to say that we're trying to save you. We're going to pray for you. That is such a powerful process for the idea of, let's say, a love-based religion that's going to actually love you. And this is what draws people in. And then like I said, there's a powerful aspect to that is lacking when you're in a socialized environment. You know, because you don't get the individual attention, even for that short time, very often. You know, if you see it, ideally, we would give each other individual attention on a regular basis, just psychologically, so that the other person knows that they're loved and appreciated.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing, to love and appreciate, and to feel love and appreciation is a thing that will definitely cause more satisfaction, a general sense of well-being, and that we lack most of the time.
Yeah, it's grounding.
And of course, it can be used falsely by false people that are just using psychology on us, and we know that, right? But there's a reason that there's a reason that, you know, men lie to women and women lie to men and tell each other what they've learned to know what the other person wants to hear. And if you become good at that, adept at that, you can have many, many relationships with many women, or vice versa. And the woman, she can become like the eternal virgin in the way that she recounts her narrative of her life, of herself. And the man can become this great hero type in his storyline, you know?
Yeah.
You ever see these guys that will tell you that they just want a chance you have a drink with them or something, they're just waiting to tell you their story about how the different fights they've been into and all the great things they did and amazing, almost unbelievable stories. There's a lot of guys out there like that. They're just waiting for someone to listen to them. And this makes them go, one of the reasons people go so far is because they finally got someone to listen. Now they can tell their whole bag of shit to some person, you know.
Again,
somebody dumb enough to listen to my shit, I'm going to give them the stream, and they take the story a little farther. Next thing you know, there's UFOs and Bigfoot and all kinds of other stuff in the story. You know, just as an example.
No, that's a great example because it brings something up for me. For the last couple of years, I stopped telling stories, and it basically became very difficult for me to have normal social interactions, which was the greatest learning process ever, because what I realized is that pretty much every interaction is a story, and people are always just talking about what's happened before, like what's happened in the past, basically. And so when you go into like you mentioned earlier, you go into a cafe or something, and what are you hearing? You're hearing about events that people have heard about that they're retelling. And, you know, if you talk to them long enough, you're going to, as you mentioned, they're going to tell you their whole life story.
some will,
yeah. It's incredible. But what I noticed through that as well is that at the same time, there's a lack of presence there. they're not here with you. They're in their fucking mind, back into the
Right.
memory.
Yeah. And they're
And
going through routines. Usually they've already practiced this routine. So it's just like you're going to do
exactly.
your shtick. You're going to do a routine. And we all get trapped in those loops, dude. We all get trapped in the groove and the record if you don't watch out. Uh,
Yep.
it happened to
Yep.
me I remember watching it with my father and wondering why he had to angrily repeat the same things over and over and over and over and over. And it would always come back to the theme of his life. And you had to hear it
Yep.
1,000 times. And he usually was very angry and unhappy. But he seemed to get some kind of pleasure out of doing it. And as an older man, I found myself do it sometimes. I'm like, what am I doing? It's like, why am I doing it? I got to stop. I
Mm-hmm.
finally had to learn to stop doing that. I would like to, if I'm going to speak, I'd like to say something new. Otherwise, why
Right.
bother? Why
Yeah.
interact? Learn and say things that are new.
Yeah. And it goes to this mask, or another favorite word is mannequin. I like mannequin because it's more than just a mask. It's like this whole doll, voodoo doll, our own personal voodoo doll, right? And suffering itself is through the doll. We have direct pain, but we don't really have direct suffering. So suffering is a secondary process that can only happen to our mask or our mannequin because it's a historical artifact. So when we're wounded, um, we're actually identified with this thing that happened to us, right? Like, and so we keep going back to it, and that's our little mannequin. Our
It's like
mannequin
a
is wounded.
golem
Our
when you say that.
mannequin
What
is
are we? It's
golem.
reminding
Yeah,
me.
it's
This
another
idea is
one.
reminding me of those ideas of what's it called? The physical body
Homunculus.
that's just been created. A golem or a I can't think of the other word right now,
Yeah. Yep.
but you say
It's
mannequin. That's an interesting way to look at it, like
yeah.
Pinocchio or something.
Yeah, yeah, because we're the one who pulls its strings. No one else can control our mental idea of who we are and what's. And anytime we think about what's happened to us, we're not thinking about what happened to this entity that is existing. We're thinking about the past version of that. And you can't think about that without creating the simulation of that past version. And that's what creates the second eye. So we always have that two eyes as a possibility anytime we step into time. And that's why time is essentially the symbol of the second eye. Because the first eye is the eye that sees. There's only one eye that sees. But to perceive that entity that sees requires a second eye. And that's where we create them as a mannequin or a mask or a golem in our minds. And that's where we project our sufferings onto that entity as well. So yeah, anytime someone's telling you the same
You've
story.
injured my entity. You've injured my golem when you
Dude, exactly.
said something that I didn't like or something. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Right?
But that's what trauma also creates, this bond between yourself and this past version of yourself, because it was this unresolved thing, right? The fact that people talk about it over and again is the indication that it's coming back because it's still an open wound. And the problem is that we're conditioned to relive the same trauma over and over again, the same memory, without realizing that every time we're doing it, we're taking the axe and we're cutting into the wound again, and we're doing the same wound over and over again. What we really want is healing, but what we're actually getting is keeping the wound open, because we're not taking a different perspective. We're always using the same point of view for the mannequin as the victim. We never take the different point of view that synthesizes the wisdom from that trauma, and that secondary wisdom perspective is what heals the traumas, because we finally get to understand what it was for. But as long as we were locked in to looking at it from first person over and over again from the memory perspective, we were never shifting the view, and so the meaning always stays the same. But the moment we shift our perspective on that same thing, we can change the meaning. And it's not about overriding the previous meaning. It's about having more than one meaning and more than one view, so that we can understand that there's always multiple sides to any problem. And so long as we're locked in only one aspect of that, we're just going to injure ourselves in a way. And that just brings me back to another point I wanted to bring up, because what happened, at least with my traumas as a child, is that I got to a point where it wasn't safe to be honest about who I really was, just because rejection happens, like people just fucking reject you for whatever reason. And that's when you create this mask, so that next time you speak to that person, you're actually speaking to them through this mask. And this mask protects you, and it also is your way of projecting an image that you want other people to like. And from that point is essentially where we start living through our memories and reflections instead of directly. And as a result, it creates these, I'm living through my own story now, because literally I'm not safe to live any other way. Who I really am is not safe to be. So I'm just going to live through this story, and I'm constantly updating this story all the time, and then telling it to people, as my way of expression. But what the real value for me was when I realized actually the real you is the best you there can ever be, and he's always better than he was the previous moment. So what's the point of clinging on to what greatness I was last hour when I'm even greater this hour? And if people don't like it, then that's got nothing to do with me, kind of thing. And as a result, like I said, for a couple of years, I've stopped communicating through stories. And I still tell, we're talking about things that have happened in my life. So,
Sure.
But I'm not like rehearsing them. I'm never telling it this, like, it just flows through me like water, instead of it being like a VCR that I'm pulling up every time I want to talk about something.
Right.
Whatever happens, it happens without me needing to actually memorize anything.
Yeah, I think it's okay, and it's the right thing to do. And I don't know if I have talked to some people who say that they're wanting to be like, let's say, do something on YouTube or something like that, but they don't do it. They say they want to, they say they're going to, and but they never do. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess it's the right thing for everybody to do what. I mean, I can't decide that, but it's just, I always feel like it's a shame when someone says they want to do something, they promise to do it, and then they don't do it. You might as well just don't say it if you're not. I mean, you can do these things. These things are not difficult. This is easy. Especially like if you get one of these programs, was it Streamlabs or even just
whatever it is,
any basic free recording program, and then you can interact, and you have an opportunity when you speak to interact with some other people that may be magnetically inclined to like something that you said, or to like even just to, maybe it feels like validation to have somebody that will listen. Like if you create great music, or you create something that, of course it's not going to feel great if no one comes and listens. You know what I mean? Eventually you're hoping that, the beauty that's inside of you is going to be recognized, because it is we are beautiful. We have beauty within us, and we have unique. There are things that make us special, but at the same time, we don't want to worship those things and think that we're so precious and special. It's like it's a tough thing, if you're a man, and you're especially for a man, trained military type of thinking and behaving, to where you have to crush those things down, and you become a group in order to
Yep.
fight another group, and so your value to the group is if you can stay on your feet and you can do what you're told when you're told, and you have to have a basic ideology that's agreed. You have to basically have an agreement of patriotism of some sort, at least to the group, if not to the country, or to other greater, to the God or whatever other things. And so, there's various dynamics at work. I don't know. I see all the time that people say they want to do it, and then they go into the groups, but there's a whole lot of people that go into the groups that are like spies and will disrupt it intentionally.
Yeah.
You see that with some of our like most more famous occultists, who we see they were part of these groups, and they eventually destroyed those groups because
Yeah.
they put themselves on the pedestal, and they shit
Yeah.
on the group, and they took all the secrets and everything with them, and then they used that because they don't feel that. It's like if you have that lack of what do they call that, sociopath, if you're a sociopath, or along the lines of sociopathic, then you don't feel the same thing that maybe you and I might feel. Maybe they might feel like it's just a game, and it's just fun,
Yeah.
and I can see that that could be true as well, that it's just a game, because most of this seems like it's a game, most of what we're experiencing. And like you said, they're laughing. It's like a child's game with it's like, how does that quote go? The aeon is a child at play.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Just when you brought up like how someone's making plans and then they kind of didn't follow up with it. This is one of these classic things that I've noticed in life that reoccurs in my life, where making the plan itself is the reward. And so when it comes to actually doing the thing, you've already taken the reward. And so you
Okay.
don't even feel like doing it. Like, I don't know if you've ever been like smashed with your friends and you're like, oh yeah, tomorrow we're gonna fucking kick it off again, or next week we're gonna do this again and it's gonna be awesome. Yeah, man, let's do it. And then you get to the day and it's like, oh no, man, I'm staying in bed, bro. Like,
Yeah.
you already reaped all the value of that plan the previous when you made it, and so you took all the energy out of it basically. And the same goes for creating art or anything. When you share your work in progress, you're essentially pulling the energy out of that thing, trying to catch an early reward for it, instead of doing the work and finishing it fully and then doing it. So that's what I've noticed is quite
Catching your
common.
chips early. It's not a bad idea, actually.
Exactly. Yeah.
We could have just talked about this chat and enjoyed it vicariously without having done it.
Right? Exactly, man. Mm. Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to bring up anything specifically, and we can dive into
Yeah,
it.
I wanted to ask you about. Oh, go ahead. You first.
I'm just going to take a quick pee break, and I'll be back in a minute.
All right, man. All right. We'll have to submit to your analysis, bro. All right, so I'll try to keep the party going while you're gone. I was just looking at some of your background stuff. That's interesting. I can't tell if that's a buffalo back there behind that with the Santa Claus hat on, but it's an interesting. I'm sure there's a point to it. Well, what I was wanting to ask him about is maybe some of the things we talked about in our last conversation. We had a pretty good 3-hour talk the other day, and a lot of it was about consciousness, and turns out we're both pretty huge fans of Philip K. Dick and some sci-fi in general. So that was fun. And this Harry is his name. He has a blog, which I would introduce if I could find it right now. But I started reading it, and it just blew me away, and how I ended up here. I was just explaining how your blog kind of really caught my attention.
Oh yeah, I could hear you. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. I wasn't sure you still had your headset on.
Yeah, definitely. So just to comment on the ox or the buffalo there, I've had that there. This is my flatmate's canvas, and I moved into this room and it just happened to be there. But because of all my interest in studying what Aleph or the letter A meant, that meant ox, and so I put it up there. And then recently I've been covering Mithraism, and so that little Santa hat, not only is it like a model of this reality, but it's also my little ode to, like, that's my little Mithra on the back of the bull kind of thing for me. So
that I knew it was something like that because it's too perfect, dude. It makes me think about that game Ollie Ollie Oxenfree.
And I've heard of it, but I haven't played it.
Well, not the actual game, but just the term, you know. I see these little children in the old stories and the old stories playing a game, Ollie Ollie Oxenfree, and it just another reminder about how all those grammar school level mythologies that we were given were trying to tell us something. They were all part of this religion and this understanding, a particular understanding of reality. So the ox with the Santa with the Magi cap, you made the connection. I don't know how you did it. It took me a long time to come there.
Yeah,
I came over here and you already got it. So,
well, I sent you a little drawing of like, yeah, we'll have to bring that up another time. We'll discuss it another time because it's just awesomeness. But I intuitively, I'll pull up a blackboard, an empty blackboard on my lap, and I'll just draw some chalk and all that. And when I'm trying to map reality, I always map it based on things that I can directly see. And then I try to understand, what do these corresponding symbols, how are they trying to communicate this thing that I can actually see? And because I'm able to actually connect it, these things come through basically intuitively, where I'll be drawing my model of the tetragrammaton, and I'm not trying to make anything. I'm just drawing like, oh, okay, yep. Mirrors, refraction, light comes in, a prism and all that. So I'm just drawing it on the blackboard. And when I look at it, I'm like, that's a fucking Santa hat. No way. Like, and that's what they're trying. That's the symbol. So I love that stuff, man. And I'd love to kind of just bring up the point that pretty much my entire philosophical framework is built on the back of only what I can directly observe with my eyes closed or open. And so when I talked about in our last chat that there's a torus field, and I think this torus field is what's creating the refracted earth realm, I say that because when I close my eyes, I can actually see the torus field and I can see what I'm referring to. With the map of the soul, for example, and the Bindu point, this is another thing I observe when I close my eyes. And that's the only way I'm ever able to correspond these things. Otherwise, I would be totally just as clueless as anyone else. Like, I wouldn't have known it was talking about what I can observe unless I actually observed it. And that's also why I say you can't really communicate the meaning, because people can only see it to understand the true meaning. because when we're talking about maps, the symbols are maps pointing towards what we can see.
Did you train your mind to be able to see it this way, or did it just come to you somehow?
I didn't do any training, but I certainly did have a veil lifted from me. And
Hmm.
people talk a lot about grace. I think when we were talking previously, we were explaining how we're guided through our lives. We're guided, and the problem is we just don't really notice it. We can't really connect the patterns. But I was guided into basically a crushing divorce and, you know, like complete hopelessness with the future and all that. And that got me to a point where I gave up on the idea of myself
Hmm.
being able to provide me happiness in the future, because like previously I had hope. That hope was that something in the future is going to make all this shit worthwhile for me. And, you know, um, when I actually realized that that is actually not going to bring me happiness was when, for the first time, I closed my eyes and I actually asked myself a question. I said, "What do you fear the most?" And the answer was immediately, it said, "Me." And I'm like, what is me? And then I saw this like, oh, like all these
Hmm.
ideas, like memories, and they just kind of collapsed into like a black hole. And I realized, oh shit, what I thought was me was just a fucking memory, dude. And then that was for the first time I gained presence awareness of what was actually right in front of my eyes. But it wasn't until a synchronicity happened about a week later. Like, that was a cool thing. And I'm like, it wasn't life changing, but I realized, I'm in the present moment now. And then
Hmm.
the synchronicity came where this guy on YouTube, it was a Joe Rogan interview, and he said, I want you to like visualize your spirit. And I had no idea what a spirit was, right? But later that night, I went to bed and I, I was basically trying to get myself into like a happy place. Like, I had an experience about a month prior where I was in this forest and the sun hit my face and I felt like I was connected to God, and
Hmm.
it was a really safe, loving place, a happy place. So I'm like, if I'm going to meet my spirit, I got to create a stage for that to take place. And I'd never meditated before. So I went to bed that night, and once the thoughts calmed down and I realized that I'm not going to meditate if I keep adding thoughts, I eventually ended up in this happy place.
Hmm.
And the spirit appeared there. And as soon as that happened, I could see this circle. And this circle was like the border of, outside this circle, there was no light. And inside the circle was just hazy light. And then there was the spirit that I could see. And I realized there's nothing outside this circle. Like, this is, and I'm observing, right? So I'm not thinking about a circle. I'm seeing a circle. And I'm realizing that everything within my reality is within this circle, including the spirit. So that's for the first time I saw the border of the that logo we talk about, the logo of the sun, where it's a circle and in the middle is the point, the circumpunct. That was my first time witnessing the outer rim of the circle. And I
Hmm.
realized that rim was the outer layer of myself, and everything within it was contained within it. And at the same time, I realized that this spirit that I'm observing, if I'm the rim, then why is the spirit an object within the awareness? And I realized there was a mistake taking place where if this spirit is within my circle, then I don't want it to be an object, because that means I've created a sense of separation between myself and that spirit. And I realized my whole life I've been separated from this spirit. And I'm like, I don't want that to be the case anymore. I don't want to be separated from the spirit. And I was crying. I'm still in this visualization meditation, but I was like breaking down, crying, realizing I've spent my whole life disconnected from my own spirit. And so what I did at that point, once I realized it was my circle, I said, I invite the spirit to take part in all of me, so that there's my body becomes your body, my vision becomes your vision, because you are my spirit. So let's remove all objectification. And actually, it was like a feminine act where I was like, I invite you into me to be all of me, because I know you're my spirit. And that's what happened. The spirit went from an object to taking over my entire field. And the light of the spirit ended up filling my entire field at that point. And then the spirit took me to the moon.
Really?
Yeah. We flew me out of the earth up to the moon. And then I witnessed the moon, and all of these lights appeared on the moon. And then I'm like, holy fucking shit, like this is just, I'm like flying, I'm being taken by the spirit, I'm flying with the spirit, like we're in this loving embrace basically of, and then I realized, oh shit, like the body's back down in earth, maybe it's time we go back now. And so what I consider that circle, I call that my soul, even though it doesn't matter, but I call that my soul. And then the spirit, so the soul and my spirit, we went back down into the body. And that's what I consider like a unification of that soul, that spirit, and the flesh, which is talked about in a lot of religious symbology.
Bro, that's mind-blowing. That's mind-blowing. Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to tell you that.
No. If you have questions,
I'm listening. I'm reacting internally. I don't want to interrupt, but
no, perfect.
Very cool.
So I didn't really know the significance of this, but I felt it. Like I was just like completely reborn at that point. And the most interesting thing was, from that moment, all of my vision remains filled with the spirit. So like an augmented reality, I see the spirit. That same spirit is always present for me. And fascinating things were taking place pretty much from the next day after I slept that night. The next day, I started seeing symbols, light-based symbols being projected into the world, different geometry and numbers projected in the spirit of the light. And I observed them to kind of be like portals, basically, of like transporting me to different download centers, you might call them, where all of this wisdom started coming in that I'd never accumulated in this lifestyle, in this life. So basically, universal knowledge was just like fed into me basically from that point. And I was like an overnight sage in the way where I could finally, all of the symbology and stuff became like decrypted, and I could finally understand what the fuck it was all talking about because of what I just did, you know, like, I finally understand.
Amazing. Did this epiphany or this experience stay with you beyond the day and time that this occurred?
Oh yeah. So that ended up, it wasn't a full-blown rapture until I went into Well, actually, that next day I went for a walk, and it was like I could see in Technicolor, and everything became like a crystalline gold shimmering. Like all the trees, I could see gold shimmering, like everything was made out of crystalline. And I was standing under this tree, and it was extremely windy, and I was looking at this tree like, this is the most beautiful tree I've ever observed. Like, I've never actually observed a tree in my life, and now I'm looking at this tree, and I'm totally okay if the branch snaps off and I die right now. I'll die the happiest man on the planet, and I accept my death. And when that happened, basically just got like filled with bliss, basically. And that created this rapture situation that lasted a month and a half.
A month and a
You
half.
brought up PK.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I wanted to get back to PKD at some point, but I didn't want to interrupt your flow. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing, because that's very, very unusual. I mean, from my experience, I haven't had that kind of I haven't been blessed with something like that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I assume this is why you named your channel M.I. Whole, like the holy place. Is that your holy place?
It has so many meanings, that little phrase. It's not even funny. But yeah, one of them is definitely whole, as in the circle is in itself a whole, but holy. But we're talking about am I whole? WHOLE. Well, It was only when I realized that circle that I understood what true wholeness was something we carry with us at all times. And it's not something we know, it's something we see. And so you can equate it to like, if your soul is like your VR set for existence, or it's your VR set and everything in it is inside your home. Your home is your soul, so we carry our wholeness everywhere we go. And it became a cornerstone theme for me, wholeness as a way to remember, because even all these awesome things happen to you, you're still living in a memory-based reality. And as a result, everything wants to pull you back into that reflected aspect and subdivide yourself in some way using thought or projections. And so wholeness was like my cornerstone, where I have to fall. Anytime I see the thoughts trying to separate myself, I just fall back into myself. That's right. I'm whole. I can't not be whole. So
well, dude,
it's like
I'm pondering what you had to say. I need a quick restroom break myself. I'll be right back. If you can, I don't know if you want to share something about yourself that like my viewers don't know you, and it would be nice to know about your channel and some of your music or whatever else you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, cool.
I'll be right back, bro. Okay.
Awesome.
I think I'm gonna just turn off my cam for a second while I'm doing this.
Cool. No worries. Yeah. So a little bit. I'll just continue like a little bit. What I've been working on. I kind of got to a point where I started unloading a lot of things in my life, because what happens after this type of revelation is you realize, a lot of the things that I had going on in my life were just compensatory, essentially. And I realized I didn't need a lot of those things anymore. So I was able to start shedding a lot of what you would call baggage, but it's really just like, it wasn't necessary. It was something I volunteered to do. So I basically just kind of sold most of my possessions and came to the end of a tenancy lease, and I put it out there to the universe, like, I don't know where I'm going to go from here, but I'm going to make myself totally trusting and receptive to where I need to be put next. And basically, when I did that, my mom reached out and she was like, "Do you want to come live with me?" And she was in another state and city, and I went and moved with my mom for a little bit. And I thought that would be great. I can come and share some of this love with her. And when I arrived there, that was about maybe 2 years ago now, I encountered extreme difficulty. A lot of this positivity wasn't really well received, and I kind of had the idea like, oh, I'll wake my mom up, basically. Like, that's the first thing I wanted to do, was I wanted to wake everybody up to this, which is the most innocent thing you can imagine, right? Like, when you find such valuable treasure, the only thing I wanted to do was share that with other people in the way that I wanted them to be able to perceive reality directly, basically. But what I found was it was just very difficult to communicate, because it was very new to me, and I didn't really know how to articulate it in a way that would be valuable for other people. And it's only until now that I'm really coming to a point where I can do that. And after a bit of time, I basically left my mom's place, and it was only after I left that all of the things we were talking about during the time that I stayed with her for about a year, all of that stuff connected with her when there was a little bit of distance between us. Because when I was living in the house, there's this thing about living with people, you end up kind of projecting all your problems onto them, and you can't really see them positively a lot of the time when that's happening. So all of these, things I'm trying to communicate with my mom about, the things we're talking about today, were just we're not really received. It wasn't the right timing for her. But after a lot of friction, and it was a lot of friction, it was a crucible for me, because I was like, well, the universe, you've sent me here to be with my mom, and she's not interested in anything I'm fucking got to offer, basically. So like, that sent me down like my own little spiral again, crisis of meaning, to try to figure out, well, why am I here? Why did you bring me here if I'm not wanted? But then when I moved to a new location, then suddenly the situation with my mom was like, she became a new person, and she's like, she's making huge strides in her own journey right now, that it wouldn't have been possible if I didn't come and influence her. And I still influence her in the most positive, loving way, just by being a listener, basically. I don't really try to tell her what she should do. I just try to give her new perspectives, and then it's up to her if she agrees with that or not. And a lot of the time, I'll try to ask questions instead of provide answers, and I found that to be a lot more successful in being able to help people. But they got to a point when I moved to this new house where I realized there needed to be more baggage to get rid of, because I was going through this kind of void experience, essentially, which was probably the most profound aspect of my journey, but it was also the most crushing. Certain things get revealed through that process that just completely dismantle how you view reality, and also creates this understanding of this like primordial loneliness that is the reason for creation in the first place. But when you're experiencing what it is, when you're experiencing that void process, you become that lonely, or any distinction between you and that lonely creator entity has disappeared, and so then you feel that loneliness, and it's a crushing thing to go through, basically. But it's part of it, part of the tempering process. And eventually, I cleared out a lot of stuff in my life to the point where I was basically spending all my time just kind of in peaceful meditation, not really doing much, not really consuming much content, because after going through this kind of void experience, you realize that you can just get all the information inside. You didn't need to watch YouTube for any of it, but that creates this like social disconnection as well, that pushes you back to YouTube just so you can interact with humans still. It's very important to have a human experience. And eventually lost my grounding force, which was my dog. I had a dog named Roxy. She was my best friend for over 12 years. And she was pretty much the only link to reality that I had left that was grounding for me. And she eventually, she's so old that I had to kind of end her life. And through that experience, I had basically nothing going on except pure sadness and sorrow. And through that sorrow, I didn't do anything anymore except be with the sorrow and just be present with it and honor it. And kind of after that process, I began writing songs, basically, just to try to transmute that energy into something positive. And so I began writing songs based on that loss. And I'm still doing it today. It's the only method really that I use for transmutation is, creativity of songs or art or whatever it is. Or, now this comes, our conversation is a creative act in itself. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
How do you come up with your are you writing the lyrics and the music, or what's your focus?
I'm not actually doing anything. That's the funny thing. Like, I don't even come up with the words. I look at myself like a pen. I'm the pen. So my job, the energy already knows what it wants to say. My job is to actually be the pen that writes the words. And so anytime I'm creating a song, I'll just open a notepad on the computer, and the words will just come out, and I'll write them down. And usually it's very poetic and all that shit, but I've never been a poetic kind of guy or anything.
I see it because because remember I showed you this book the last time that we talked. This book about the Philip K. Dick's exegesis, or depending how you pronounce it, exegesis. Well, I bring it up because, Philip K. Dick meant a lot to me through my life, especially as a young man. And when I had my, later on in life, I kind of eventually let go of all that because, I got into more serious topics, right? Of course, Philip K. Dick was incredible and a lot of the other sci-fi that I was into. But as an adult, I eventually started reading philosophy and other things, more direct, like the idea. It's all concentrated, however, in these authors. A lot of these authors are already been playing with these concepts for years, and that's how come their writing is so good. But anyway, I had this, after my experience, I started having a lot of dreams. My own sort of like awakening. I didn't have the same, everybody has a different sort of, I guess, a different what we might think of as an awakening experience of some sort.
Yeah.
Mine was rather dark and painful. But afterward, I spent a period of years where I would just have really intense dreams. And one of the dreams I had was about I was in a library. I have a lot of dreams where I go into a library. I'm visiting a library. I had different names of these libraries, and they're in locations that were strange, like under the courthouse, under the under the courthouse when I was on probation. Uh, I saw that a lot, that those types of dreams. But anyways, there's this one dream that I had where I was in the library and I stole a pen. There were two pens. I was writing. I wasn't just
Mhm.
reading. I loved this library. And I would sit down at the big table and I would borrow the pen. There was a silver pen and a golden pen. And I took the golden pen and I wanted my words to be true, 100%. I wanted to try to find truth. And I felt here with this pen, I could finally write something true. So I was writing with this pen, and this had such a powerful influence on me. Well, what happened was in the dream, apparently I tried to take the pen out of the library and tried to steal this pen, right? Because
Yeah.
I wanted this pen so badly. I wanted to have it and have the truth. And I wanted to be able to speak the truth and write the truth. And anyway, the end of the dream was I think I left the library, and as I was leaving the library, there was a librarian. There was a black dude, and he was, which is unusual, right? A black librarian. But anyways, I just
Yeah.
I was trying to
He's in
ask
the
like
hood.
I was asking like what I tried to distract the fact that I was taking this pen with me by asking a question or something like when I'm ready to leave and check out my books. I just was going to stroll past, but then I thought, well, I'll try to cover it. I tried to talk to him. I was like, yeah, can you tell me how to get to the such and such place, like for directions? And he was like, yeah. I mean, and it was about where the judge was actually, because I was on probation and I was facing a sentence. And this is
Hmm.
part of the dream. So I went and I was like, okay, yeah, thank you for the directions. It was like I was asking directions to this office. Okay. Then a couple years later or so, I had another dream. I was up on a rooftop and I had to, there was a game being played on a high top, a high facade of some sort. Everything was white. All these beautiful people were around on top of this. You could look down below us and you could see all the trees and forest down below. And it was like this wonderful place. And anyway, I, my wife was there. I was looking for our son, and I couldn't find him. And she said, "Oh, he's." She didn't know where he was, so I went looking for him, and I couldn't find him. So I went interior of the place, and I saw there was a big game board set up, and there was my son on the floor with this giant game board, and across from the game board was this like a black girl, little girl, older than him. He was
Yeah.
quite. She was a bit older. They were facing one another across this great board of, and it was some sort of complex game being played. And I was like, I need to go down to the library and get something. So then I went past them. I said hello to them. I went past them. I went down this spiral staircase, down, 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 like I was going into the bowels of the earth. And I came to this library.
Yeah.
It was the same library, the same librarian. And when I went up, when I finally, I waited in line to get up to speak to him. And because I was going to check out a book, I had forgotten about that, the whole thing about the past, what I had
The
done.
pen. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to check out this book. And I was going to make sure if I had any fees or anything or something like that. And so when I got up to him, he turned his back on me and he was singing. And I have all these, I have write down all my dreams. He was singing a song and just ignoring me. And I went finally, I was like, hello, I kept on trying to get his attention. Finally, he turned and noticed me. He said, oh, you're back. And he said, why didn't you go up to room so and so from the time that he'd give me directions?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah. I tried to play it off or something like that. And
Yeah,
then
he caught you out.
I was suddenly surrounded by these tall, white, bird-like beings. They came up behind me. They were very tall, and they were. I can't really describe them because I didn't look at them clearly. They were behind me, right? But and the guy was the librarian was saying things to me very directly, and he was basically saying, I can't recall just now, but it was basically that I was now going to face the consequences, and and all of a sudden I was like forced to the back wall of the room, the wall by all these bodies of these creatures, and all the wall opened up. I fell through the wall, and when I got back up, I was in prison. I was in a prison, type of prison,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Anyway, there was a very, I won't go into the whole dream because it would take too long, but I will just tell you that there was this powerful dynamic there about our lives and where we were and things like that in reality. And at least for me, it seemed that way.
Yep.
And there were all these mythic themes going on. And uh, I saw that I actually had to get this golden pen. I needed this golden pen. And so when I went to the end, my final day on probation, you know, because I had never been on any situation like this with the legal system. I went on my last day on probation, and I had finally completed everything they needed me to do, and it was like I'm finally going to put this thing behind me, And anyways, I carried this book with me on that day because I didn't know how long I'd be waiting. I was reading this book, so my golden book, right? And I was reading it, and I had put a pen in my pocket. While I was talking to the girl, she told me that I was going to have to go to. It was a woman. Her name was Carolyn, a redheaded lady, and she was telling me I'm going to have to go back to the courthouse in Phoenix again because I need to get some paperwork in order for my probation to officially be over because I had jumped through every hoop and it had lasted 3 years, and
Wow.
it was a big deal. It was a big deal
Yeah,
staying out of jail,
yeah.
staying out of prison, right? Um, and anyways, what it was is I had fought with the police, and in the fight with the police, I was charged. So with injuring one of the police. So anyway, that's just the short of it. I'm not gonna tell the whole deal, but
Yeah, yeah.
anyway, what happened there was with this pen was I had the pen in my pocket because I was also writing. I always had a journal with me. I was writing. I was sitting there writing. I had my book and my journal. So if I was sitting there waiting for 2 hours, I'd be fine. I had something to do, you know. But I didn't get far. Stuck the pen in my pocket. Got in her office. We were talking. She told me I had to go back into this. I had to go down underneath the whole courthouse, and I had had the dream about that. I went under the courthouse and it had ended in prison. So I told her that directly. Instead of sitting there and acting, I just openly said, I can't believe you're telling me this. I just had this dream that I was going to have to go under the courthouse and I was put back in
Yep.
prison. And amazingly, she's like, really? Did you really? And I said, yeah. And she said, don't worry. That's not going to happen. Um, it's just the paperwork you need to get. And everybody has to go down there. No, there's no other way. You have to do it. So, because I didn't want to
Yeah.
go. I did not want to go. And I even told my wife, I said, honey, I don't know if I'm coming back, you
Yeah.
know, on the day when I went to get it. But she told me all this stuff and she reassured me. And I pulled out my pen and I pulled out the pen to take the note on the pad about the date when I was going to go over there, what I had to do, what I had to ask for, the exact paperwork. And I saw the pen had leaked all over my pants and it was ink all over. And it was all over my hands. And I picked up my book, and the ink was all over my book. I had smeared my treasured golden Philip K. Dick book, the Exegesis of Philip K. Dick, with this ink, right? And I was like mortified, right? And I was like, oh man, I was trying to wipe it off. And anyhow, the link between the pen and the book and the golden pen. So I started writing everything I had started already because of the dreams about this golden pen. I had already started writing my poetry in golden ink. Certain
Wow.
ones, you know,
Yeah,
while it
yeah.
lasted. I had gotten a pen that had
Yep.
golden ink and writing. I wrote a couple of decent poems with that, maybe
Hmm.
a song or two that I thought. And then anyway, what happened was, sure enough, I went down to the courthouse. I went down under the courthouse, and there at the area there was a security guard, and there was a black dude sitting at a podium, just exactly like in my dream. But it wasn't exactly because he wasn't a librarian, but he was just a cop.
Yep.
But he was just a cop, and he didn't do anything to me. But I had to come up and ask him directions, and it was like the information down there and that level of this huge. There's massive, massive. The industry here for prisons and jails is enormous. The
Yep.
facilities are massive. Football fields size jails, bigger, bigger than that.
Yep.
So anyway, it was the same with the court system and all the attorneys and the judges and all these different things I had to do when I was during that time period. It was very, of course, it was traumatic, and that's what she said to me. She said, "I understand you were traumatized by what happened," and I wasn't expecting to hear that kind of empathy from the probation officer, because she was essentially just trying to force me to do everything. And they had already kind of sold me out to the police when I was going to go to court, and I had to talk to them previously. I had to, like, I was just open and honest.
Yeah.
And when I got to the court, the district attorney had all the information of everything that I said, so they could use it against me, sort of, in case they were able to. I was fortunate that, uh, the judge. I could have spent I could have spent 6 months to a year in jail over what I'd done.
Mm.
But I was fortunate that
Yep.
they saw that I had this. That was my first offense, and I had, there was no, but it was violence, you know, and so that's something that I hadn't really done before. Definitely leads into something bad, of course, terrible consequences. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that my dream had a sort of, I think our dreams are communicating to us on various ways that we don't necessarily recognize. It doesn't mean you're going to see future event. I think they do see future events, but we don't realize what we're seeing until later. And and we wouldn't ever find out unless we analyzed our dreams.
Yeah.
So maybe
That's
we
right.
see the future and the past, and things are different than what we imagine them. But this whole deal about the pen tells me that my strong connection to this concept and why it affected me so much tells me that something about what you had to say here about you see yourself as a pen, you know, very, very interesting. I just wanted to tell you that.
Yeah.
And the connection
Yeah.
also we had with the whole idea about Philip K. Dick in the first place is the reason that I felt compelled to tell you that.
Oh, thank you. Because I can see a symbolic framework with everything you've described from that dream. And so I'll give you my breakdown on what I correspond to these symbols that you've got. The first symbol is a library. If you think about a library, what that represents is the scales of balance or justice. If you think about Libra, library, Libra, so you think about scales basically. What do scales do? They balance, right? So in the state of balance is where you would find your pen of truth. But what's the pen a symbol of? Well, when you've talked to me, you've probably turned out that the pen is a symbol of the spirit or the father. And so that's
Mhm.
the source of truth in a sense, right? Because that's, at least for me, that was when I actually discovered what truth was this living spirit. It wasn't this knowledge. It was the source of knowledge is the truth, not the knowledge itself. And so the pen,
Hmm.
I would symbolically link to that being channeled through the spirit. So the truth comes through the spirit. Now you had two elements to this. I'm not sure about the not sure exactly what the maybe the black library officer might represent the other half of you, or the other half of your, because I look at ourselves like two suns, where this world is our main sun, and then the other circle that I'm talking about is like our black sun, or I even refer
Mhm.
to it as a moon as well. I think
Yeah.
it's symbolically represents the moon. So that moon, that black would represent your moon, basically. So a scale
It's
has two
Saturnian.
sides to it.
So I'm sure you know
Sorry, what was
that.
that?
I just said it's Saturnian. Much of my experience was Saturnian, and I didn't know. I didn't know that, but I mean, what we might call Saturnian, like the hat that's on the ox over there.
Yep.
Um, that's where I've come to understand only, by looking and looking and looking at these things for a long period of time. I didn't understand, but I know that it has to do with honesty and dishonesty.
Yep.
And when I attempted dishonesty, I was punished. That
Absolutely.
happened in the beginning. That was the lesson that I needed to have
Mm-hmm.
in the first place, why the painful experience happened in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
and why it happened with police versus anyone else. I mean,
Yep.
you know what I mean? If I, who goes
Well,
into, who goes into jail and fights the cops in the jail and gets themselves in a lot of
yeah.
trouble? It was a stupid thing to do. But at the time,
Yep.
I couldn't control myself. There was a forces at work in me that forced me to do it. I can't even explain it. It
Yep.
was like
And yeah.
I was under attack, but it wasn't necessarily them, but they were the only people. It felt like they're the only ones that I could unleash it on.
Yeah.
Whatever's inside of me, whatever. Uh, it was like
I think
something. It was like becoming a different person at that time. It
the,
was like
the
like I
symbols.
said, Lupercalia, and there was a wolf. It was like a werewolf aspect that I can't even explain
Yep.
because I don't behave like that. But in that situation, and the things that had happened to me and the resentment I'd felt toward police for so long, it
Mm-hmm.
just came out of me. And I thought that they could handle, that's their job and everything, but they couldn't. And the whole
Yep.
deal, it was, of course I regretted it, but um, there were no weapons or anything like that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
luckily, it was just hands and fists and everything, and that was the end of it. But
Yep.
again, I didn't mean to take away from what you're saying. I just wanted to explain that little aspect and how
No.
come that I feel it was Saturn. I now know, I now have learned through the study of Magi that it is ultimately Saturn that is at the top of this structure. I mean, this is the symbolism, okay? I don't know
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it's the actual entity that is, this is the symbolism, and there's a real power
It's a
and
symbol.
force
Yeah.
there.
It's a symbol.
And for me, it was about honesty, and I had to make a promise.
Yep.
And I didn't, even in my dream, when I deviated from this promise, I went back to prison. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason that I exposed and laid myself out there instead of using the opportunity to lie and cover and try to get out of it. I have this concept, right or wrong, that I want to pay for whatever crimes I do now in this life and
Yep.
not have to drag it out into future realities. If I could pay for it now, pay for it now, you know?
Exactly. The same for me. And I think that's why your dream and your experiences actually communicating that to you, is that you actually have to go through this in order to process that. Like what I'm getting with these black figures in your dream seem to point to me that these are your shadow side, or your, in film they refer to it as like an evil twin or something like that, but it's really just the other side of ourself that we're not conscious of. And so long as we're not integrated with that, then we're unbalanced. And that brings it back to like the Libra scales, is like there's two sides to the scale. And for you to access the pen of truth is going to require that you integrate with your shadow and have the balance scales, in a sense, right? And you can't do that when you're deceiving yourself or other people. And so you got to actually go through that. That's why your dream has a mountain, the upper or visible threshold, but then it's got that spiral staircase into the underworld.
Oh, you caught
Because
that.
the underworld's where your shadow lives, you know? And I think you cannot actually become integrated without going, to go up, you must go down. And that's what I can see, is that I accessed my integration through my underground, my underworld, through hell, basically. And just to point on what you're saying with Saturn, I equate that ring that I'm referring to as Saturn's ring, and I refer to the Bindu point as Saturn. So,
So we're sort of in the same page with that, and that's good. I wanted to see where you were on that because of your symbolism there, and I feel that literally you've got the hat of the Magi, the Liberty cap on top of that ox over there, and that is the message. It's right in there, and I never would have recognized it even a year ago. Even a year ago, I wouldn't have known it. So it's cool. It's good to meet you.
Yeah, it's same for me. Like, this is all coming recently for me. I had the experience like 3.5 years ago, but the majority of the stuff I'm talking about is only coming to me after the last 12 months, basically. It's a very slow process to unravel, because you've got to go through the underworld. So going through the void is what actually highlighted all this stuff to me. It wasn't the initial rapture experience that did it. All of this high level symbolic correspondence has only come recently for me. So,
wow.
Okay. But there's something Philip K. Dick said that actually corresponds to something I saw. So soon after that spirit integration happened, I was just having a shower, and then my whole visual field was taken over by a bright pink or purple vortex. And in the middle of the vortex, it was the Eye of Sauron.
Oh.
And when that flash happened, that kicked off a lot of stuff for me. So I just wanted to bring that up, because PK Dick, he brings that up, I think, in Valis, where he talks about the pink beam of light.
Yeah, well, he does. That's his story about his experience that you mentioned. You called it a what did you call it? You called it you gave it a rapture name. That's right. Well,
yeah.
That's by no means his only experience. I think that we're all having experiences all the time, but that's the one that he kept referring to when he was talking about time displacement. And he utilized that when he talked about how his recognition that we're in a simulation of some sort, and that he felt the vision that, and it's interesting because you see here, I keep holding this up. You see here on the front, it's the Vesica Pisces. Well, my newest revelation that have been coming to me are about this fish, this Jesus fish, and that is specifically the topic of his dream, or his experience, let's say, put it that way. Where he was under, maybe it was he was on painkillers for his tooth, and he was going through this experience, and he had this pink beam light vision, and he saw And when he saw the girl, supposedly you could order drugs from the dispensary and they would deliver it to your door at this time. I wish we had that
Yeah.
now. But
I,
some girl comes from the pharmacy, some girl that he saw as a beautiful young girl wearing a Jesus fish necklace. And this gave him this incredible insight and recognition of that he was displaced in time, and he was actually in the time period of supposedly the Christians being hunted by the Romans
yeah.
during that
Yeah.
time. And this idea of the fish is supposed to be a revelation of like, okay, we're on the same page. We're we're in a secret club. We know what
Yeah.
but we have to keep it a secret because they'll kill us. Well, as it happens, that is the very same story of the Magi.
Hmm.
They supposedly had to keep their secret secret because they would be killed. So what I've come to is that the Jesus story itself is the story of Magi, and in fact, the secrecy around it, and having spent a lot of time with this Persian Magi character, he's just a guy, just like you and I, but he just happened to be focused on that particular topic. And it was
Hmm.
interesting because that he knows a lot about a lot of things that I had never heard before, and I had never heard anywhere, not even in the esoteric books of the Masons or anywhere else. So it was fascinating to me. So I started paying attention to what he had to say and kind of bonded with him to some degree. And because of that, I came to understand that the Magi, the storyline where you have Jesus is in birth and the Magi come,
Hmm.
these Magi, these Magi, there's like often you'll see three and there'll be like one is a black one and they have different names, whatever. I won't get into that, but it's interesting because this is the gift. This Jesus story is like the gift of the Magi. In other words, it was created by them, and the character, the child, is supposed to be a Magi being born. This is not necessarily the birth of the one and only Messiah to come. This is
Hmm.
just the birth of a Messiah, which Masa or Masi or whatever the terms they use is another of them because the child is born from the divine feminine, which the eternal virgin must be a whore because she's love, to love the mother of us all. There's no way that she could, it's not an insult to say that it means to love all is to be, and if you love me, if you say you love me, and then I say, well, what are you doing talking to the other person? I thought you
Hmm.
loved me, you slut. You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
if you try to diversify your love to others,
Hmm.
that is the concept of what it is. And so if we reduce love to sex, as they do in the phallic and the Yoni religions, Lingam and Yoni, it becomes that it is love. It's a love affair between these two entities, the male and the female, right? It's a love affair
Hmm.
there. We're part of the love affair. And yes, it's very by its very nature, there are many pollinators. She has many pollinators, but it's still a love story.
Yeah.
So you each one of us has our value, you know, in this
Hmm.
story. We don't need to be this select one and only type of thing. That's where I was
Yeah.
going.
Well,
So,
yeah.
story of the
No,
Magi
no, it's good.
has a lot to do with
Definitely.
that. Has to do with the Saturnian gnosis. Is where I was going.
That's right. And what you brought up, a couple of things I'll want to discuss. I'll start with the most recent one you're talking about with the Magi. Oh, actually, with the whore, essentially the virgin, taking many pollinators, is she's searching for the true pollinator, which is this spirit that we're talking about. And in the meantime, she's dealing with her own creations as the false as intermediary. as temporary substitutes until symbolically the true spirit or sperm pollinates her, and that's when the life is brought into her darkness, right? Because what I noticed is that that black circle was a void. It had no light in it, and it was only when I actually made union with that spirit did the light come and permanently fill that. So I see that as almost like a representation of inseminating the feminine
Hmm.
with a living fertility, not a fertility that she's created, because I perceive that everything within that ring is her feminine creation in a way. So the objects of that creation aren't really able to provide her with the pollination that will bring her back to life, because they are only aspects of her own self in a way. And so it's that alien sperm, which is that spirit coming through the Bindu hole, that she is really wanting us to fertilize within our own souls, each one of us. And you talk about, people want a savior, but it doesn't work that way. The Messiah is there as a symbol for something that you're supposed to do, and it's never going to happen outside of you. It could happen to everyone around you, except if you don't do it in yourself, then you're never going to see it, basically. So the reason that I think this is important is because what do the Magi bring to the Messiah? On the top of my head, they bring frankincense, which is a tree resin. They bring myrrh, which is another tree resin, and they bring gold. So myrrh is the symbol for the sea, or the Mary. Myrrh, Mary. That's the feminine principle. That's the circle that we're talking about. The frankincense, I believe that frank means free man. So free man would be the one that has shed his reflected identity and is actually free from his own illusion, basically. So he can see the Mary, because you can't see the Mary when you're still living in a non-direct perception, basically.
So Frank is an honest John.
Oh, is it? Well, that's. I think that's
Yeah,
us.
because no, I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
that's might be where you're going because it's well,
Yep.
from the Magi vision, this is the cave of the Magi,
Mm-hmm.
and inside of the cave live the genies, the gene. Okay, these are
Yep.
by the term. If you look at it with the Isis whore concept, then these are the Johns. So the genes that go into the genes of our genealogy
Yep.
are the jinn. So they're
Mm.
imaged as demons. They're imaged as demonic, dark characters.
Yep.
And so this is just how I came to the place where you're already at here. That's how I got here. So I want to express that here
Oh,
when
that's
you're
perfect.
talking about this hole, and I say the hole in the bottom of the sea because when you look at Saturn, if you look at the image of Saturn when it throws its ring,
Mm-hmm.
when it throws its shadow across the ring, you will see a C in the sky. It looks like
Yeah.
the letter C, in addition to
Wow.
look like an
I didn't know
an
that.
I.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
you'll literally. And so I
That's
was
perfect.
trying to figure out for a long time why did the Persians call the Seymour bird the seabird? And
Yeah.
I finally got it. I was staring at so many images of Saturn with all the different podcasts I did, and I was like, wait a second, it looks like a C. And in
Yep.
fact, that the G that's on the Masonic apron is very likely a C. It's a convoluted C, I think. So the goddess or the goddess of the sea, what's really hidden under is that we're all worshiping the divine feminine. We just don't know it. There's no other worship for us. That's what it
Yep.
is. And even the worship of the phallic, if you have I used to have a big totem of a penis that somebody gave me, and I kept it as a joke, and I kept it. that I was always talking to people, and this dude's like, I want you to have this. He was moving out. Like, I've got some stuff for you. And he left it for me in a box. And when I opened the box, like, what the? But it wasn't like a dildo. It wasn't like a dildo or something. No, it was a literal, it was for worship. It was hand carved from someplace in Philippines or somewhere where he had traveled. And it was representing this God ultimately. And I didn't know that at the time. I just thought I was funny as hell. I thought it was hilarious to make everybody, have to look at this for a while. I put it at a friend's house where we used to have our parties, and he left it up. He left it up there too, so everybody that came over would have to see this thing. And ironically, we had some of the greatest parties, some of the greatest fun and good times at those events, as if that. In the Magi way, now I know, I didn't know then, but now I know that it is actually it's very much about idols.
Yeah.
So these idols, though, like you could say, represent like your mannequin, or, you know what I mean? The mannequin of yourself,
Yeah.
So whereas Persian Magi he says the ideal way of living would be for us all to have our penises out at all the times.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, we should be all running around naked. And
definitely.
So like the Garden of Eden, or
I like it.
The Garden of Babylon or whatever, where I think of the Garden of Eden as like a pleasure garden, and God, or the ruler of the garden, is like, what are you doing? Why you got clothes on?
Yeah.
Why are you covering up your truth?
Yeah.
Exactly. And the people are like, because we're ashamed. We're ashamed of our true selves. The same way that we have to hide who we really are. It's just another reflection of the way that we have come to feel because of the judgments and behaviors of human beings, and groups of people get together and they humiliate others. And that's all part of it, though. Humiliation, they even do the rituals. They used to do humiliation rituals. And so if we just look at it as a humiliation ritual and endure it, and come through it and realize, okay, that wasn't so bad, actually. It feels so painful, but it wasn't as bad as actual physical, having a hand chopped off or something. Other types of ways of experiencing it, So did I take you off? I know I threw
No, you didn't actually. That's perfect, man. And you go through the pain at the time. You feel like it's going to last forever and it's unbearable. But then afterwards, you're like, oh, I survived that. Oh shit, I could do that again and survive that. And that's what the humiliation rituals are for. That purpose. They're supposed to cut you down and humble you. But then after you're humbled, you're like, oh shit, I survived that. And wait, I'm more able to handle it in the future. But on the penis stuff, dick and balls is the actual model for reality. It's not just the model for reality. It's how the reality is actually structured. It's because it's trying to communicate the same story to us basically everywhere, as above, so below. And so if you look at like the magnetic pole of the Earth, you've got a pole, and then you've got these two separate circular balls, basically. It's a dick and balls. Just the Earth itself, the magnetic
field.
Saying
like you're saying like the two suns as the
like normal, and in normal Earth science, there's two magnetic poles. They're actually separate circular. If you look at it in an image, they're separate circular. It's like a figure 8, and then in the middle is like this line down the middle, which is representing the pole, and they use that as a representation of the magnetic field of Earth.
It's like the face of the owl. It's a bit like the face of the owl with the line being the nose.
And that's the Taurus field as well. So that's why it's also an apple. So it's pretty funny. It's all pointing to the same symbol. It's like you can't escape it. No matter what you do, you can't escape it, because it's the only game in town. But I not only do I think we should have our dicks out, I think we are all walking dicks in a way, and it's kind of like a joke, like a cosmic joke that we're all walking dicks on this plane. um, oh, yes. So you were talking about C, right? C as in C, the letter, but also CEA, but also SEE as into C, right? And so,
Of course. Yeah.
the model I'm talking about with that circle and the bindu is essentially the model of an eye.
Right.
And the funny thing is because you can observe the eye, it's the eye observing the eye. It's like this paradoxical, the the eye seeing itself. It's the eye looks back at itself, but it's not looking back at itself. That's the thing, because like when I'm talking about I see a circle and a dot, right? You think, well, I might perceive myself as like somehow looking in at that, but that's not what it is. The circle and the bindu is your whole body. So your body is the eye that looks at the world itself. It's this most amazing thing. But the reason I wanted to bring up the sea is because this circle represents Mary. The word mare means sea, right? So if the viewers look it up, mare, MER, means sea, but it also like means 100 million different things, like a horse, like also it relates to death. And the Magi brought to represent Mary, they brought myrrh, and myrrh is a type of incense that you burn as a death ritual. So it pertains only to death. So it's a symbol of death, myrrh. And so we're talking about the Black Mother is essentially dead, in the sense that what brings her to life is that spirit. And so the reason why this is the only story in town is because all of us are rocking our own Mary, who's black, who's a Black Mary. And all she wants from us is to fertilize ourselves with the light of that spirit, right? And that's why this symbology refers to her as being dead or black. And it's got nothing to do with the death we think about. It's got to do with the lack of spirit. Now, it's only as far as our perception.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Have you seen the images of the mirror, what mirror looks like? You would see the resin inside of, let's say, inside of a tree.
Oh yeah, I'll bring it out. Yeah.
I mean, before it's been condensed so that we can burn it, of course. I'm talking about.
No. This is straight up resin from the tree.
Okay. Well, some of the imagery of the resin, I see it's beautiful. Some of the imagery I've seen of the resin is inside of the tree, and it's very viscous and white and viscous fluid.
Okay. I don't think I've
seen we're
that.
talking about semen. So obviously that's where I'm going. It looks as though we're talking about the semen, and it's odd because we're thinking about the male produces the semen, but inside of the semen's fluid is Mary. She's inside of there,
right?
Just like
she's the sea itself as well, right?
Yeah. So I mean, of course, every song that's about sailors and all these different concepts, Sailor Moon, and all the ideas of the sailors going from port to port, and then there's a sexual aspect to every port, and there's like there's it's prostitution, but it's also like you don't fall in love, and that's the idea of the Magi system too. Is the sin or the crime was this attempt to pair bond permanently, in this conception versus uh, eternal sexuality unbridled forever
Mhm.
in perpetual union. As soon as
Mhm.
you started pair bonding, we have stopped the process. So now we've taken the power out. The idea is that we took the power out of the hands of the gods. If you think of the gods as, let's say there are gods for a moment, and you're talking about sort of like something along the lines of genetic engineering. Okay,
Mhm.
the husbandman of the livestock. When we stop interacting freely, so the Persian Magi and this thought system is that the god that has the right. A lot of these rituals that people hate, like the king having right to sleep with your wife before you get a chance, those kind of stories. But this is like something different. It's taking it all the way for everyone. In other words, what's so divine about this whore is that she takes the seed from all of the pollinators,
Mhm.
and only she can select that which will be reproduced from it, or what will be
Yeah.
made in the combination. We're told it's very
Mhm.
simple. It's just one sperm, blah, blah, blah. But there's more to it.
Yeah.
So this takes the divinity, the propensity for the birth of the next God man society.
Mhm.
Because we've taken it away from the gods, and imagining that the way to worship God is to keep to ourselves and follow a bunch of rules and just go to church. And this other one is more what we would consider satanic paganism, to say that, well, we're all going to have sex and we're going to see what we're going to see what happens, sort of a deal.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's rules to that too, of course, but and I mean it's a tough nut to swallow, or
Yeah. Yeah.
we would put it like that. But it definitely, there's a reality to it. uh, the idea
Yeah.
that the idea that we're taking upon ourselves to decide, like, well, my son is going to be my chosen one. My firstborn son is going to be my chosen one, right? Because that's my son. But the Magi way is, you don't know whose son it really is. Does
Mhm.
it matter? God chooses,
Right.
and God is, for our purposes within the material realm, it's feminine. She can take and choose and create. And this is where the story of the Frankenstein myth is coming from. The Osiris is being rebuilt by Isis. She's not just looking for
Exactly.
him to bring him back. She's creating him forever, creating
And
him.
horror as
In order
well.
to
And
do that,
horror.
she's got to see more birds. She wants to see more. She wants to see more birds. She wants to see
Yeah.
fields of phalluses, and she gets to choose, like the goddess, like Persephone sniffing the narcissus flowers in the garden. And before she gets abducted by Hades and taken to hell, she's out there in the garden looking at all the
Mhm.
peonies and all the beautiful flowers. And she specifically mentions not the narcissus.
Hmm.
And it's interesting that narcissists do get more attention because they focus so much on their own points of view. They're so certain of their own points of view. It's just interesting because nobody likes a narcissist ultimately, but you have to be narcissistic in order to get attention. So I think we do a dance. We do mating dances and rituals, and similar to spiders, and we know we're going to get our heads cut off. And this idea of the death that you mentioned in the hole in the cave of the Magi, the death is obviously the, the death of the erection, the erect, powerful, when the phallus is in its prime and strong and has to be sacrificed. So it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be a full castration, or it's the idea that a man becomes yoked with his woman, and he donates all his seed to this woman. Isn't this what it is to be yoked? I don't know. There's a lot of conflicting ideas here, but this is where I'm at
Yeah.
right now in my
Yeah.
understanding.
A lot of it's a symbolic reflection of what's taking place, on the dark side of our soul, basically. So when you talk about the Magi, you know, we're aware that it's the woman or the mother who is creating the sons. That was with the spiritual awareness of this mother of the soul who is generating this child, this seed in the center, which is all of us individually. It's not the child who's creating the God, it's the mother itself creating the God. And so, for example, Horus is Isis. She makes Horus, basically, but it's only through this aspect of the fertile seed that comes to life. But she is the one who nurtures Horus. And it's this same symbolic representation of what we're all going through when we talk about we're guided. Everything in our life that happens is actually symbolically relevant to us, whether we perceive it or not, subliminally pushing us step by step. But what is this pushing? It's the whole reality is the mother itself being generated from within our own soul. So our own soul is the mother, and what we perceive in our reality is what she lets us perceive, essentially, in a way, because she knows what we need to become what she wants us to be in that sense. And I'm calling her, but it's really my soul. I'm the mother. You know what I mean? But there's an aspect to my own soul that I'm ignorant of that has so much higher, vast intelligence. That's what I'm referring to. The part of me that is hyper intelligent, preceding consciousness, and therefore I can't understand her, but I know it is coming through me, and it's guiding this conscious entity towards becoming the son that my soul wants to create for herself or whatever. And so that's happening to each one of us individually. And so I'll just use this example, like just the day that I had my meditation where I visualized the spirit, I saw a YouTube video that told me to do that. That's the mother telling me, providing me a trigger. Just like Philip K. Dick saw a necklace of the fish, that was his trigger. It wasn't that. His whole life was the preceding context for that trigger. But it was only that one thing that set him off. So his soul or his mother had been preparing him for that. And no one else would be able to have had that experience except for Philip, you know. And it was these triggers that we have in our life set up by our mother soul, essentially, to create the son that she wants us to be. And we're a pupil in that situation. So we're the student, we're the conscious, we're limited by our conscious cognitive awareness to the point where we can't fully understand her, but we can at least get to a point where we can understand we are being guided and actually trust that process in a way, you know. You also brought up gods, which is like really the idea of gods themselves are one of the main confusion points in the spiritual space, essentially. And so all I really want to say to that is I perceive the gods as symbolic. I think that they do create emanations, and people observe gods and different entities that communicate to them. You know, you hear people talk about they speak to Jesus or whatever, or they've had a prophetic vision and they've seen an angel or something, right? I don't deny that people see these things. What I understand all of these emanations to be, including the entire reality, is an emanation of that spirit that I'm referring to as the Father, which is the creative force for all things. And so it can choose to manifest anything that it wants to manifest as. And so while I might perceive the spirit to be a plasma, other people might perceive that to be an alien and a gray alien or something like that. And I don't deny that they've seen the gray alien. All I understand is that the source of that emanation is actually the spirit. It's the Father. And so there's only one God in that sense. But that God can manifest as all multiplicity, and it does. And each one of these manifestations of God, Zeus, Isis, whatever you want to call it, they're all symbols that are pointing us towards the territory of our own soul. And when we think of them as more than that, that's when we become sidetracked from the message that it's trying to tell us in a way. And it's not a bad thing. It's just part of our nature in a way. Another point you raised is narcissism. What I see is that it's impossible to have an ego. All egoism is narcissism in a sense, because we're talking about, instead of being who you are, you're relating yourself through an image. And that's kind of how I understand narcissism, is they're projecting an image, and that's who you're dealing with. And in the same way, that's what the ego is. The ego is a narcissist. So it's not about like who's narcissistic. It's about what level of narcissism. And we all experience some level of it if we have an ego, and we all do. So like this image-based identity system is innate. It's automatic. Even if you don't believe in it, it's going to happen. Even if you can see it, it's still going to happen. So it's unavoidable in that sense. No one's killing their ego because it's a process. It's not an entity. It's a process of existing in time. You can't exist in time without some kind of process that's like, this happened, this happened, this happened, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the ego is like, that's that thing that happened to me. And it's like, who's that me? Well, that means that thing that the thing happened to. And it's like this toxic loop, basically. And just, yeah, I don't know if you needed to jump in, but I had another.
I wanted to ask you about the circle. Well, I often refer to it as the ring. Okay, so the ring, and then there's something in the center of the ring, which I think in our last conversation I tried to say that it's basically the ox is in the ring.
I refer to it as a fissure.
Okay. Well,
like
it is
a hole.
Yeah, a fishing hole, right?
Yeah, fissure, like a breach, basically. It's like a breach.
A fissure. I see what you mean.
A fissure, yeah.
You know how mythology uses symbolism, and very often you'll see something like that. You're saying a term fissure, and you may see them symbolize that as a fish. So the Jesus fish itself, and this whole concept, you see that is one of the fish is the oxyrhynchus fish, the ox and the rink. And one of the reasons I mentioned that last time we talked, because I had just recently discovered it, really the understanding that the Jesus fish is the oxyrhynchus fish. And it is also, so it's the fish that swallowed the penis of Osiris.
Okay.
So the Jesus is representing the very same mythology. And this is why we have the Jesus fish. And the fish it's a obviously, I mean, it's a grounds for a religion. A religion that wants to breed and multiply. The story is Jesus is going to multiply the fishes.
Yeah.
So you
Yep.
increase the congregation, you build a population. We build populations, like population explosion, in order to build a religion. We see that in every religion. You look at the Christianity once exploded at one time. It was exploding over the world, overflowing and taking over and at war with all the others. Now we see it a lot with Islam. We saw it with Mormonism here where I'm at right now. I'm in Mormon territory, and it was all conquered, this whole area where I'm at, Utah, Arizona, by these Mormons. And ironically, the Oxyrhynchus fish is also the more Mormani more Mairi fish. So this guy Joseph Smith, in my estimation, I've never heard this anywhere, but I can tell you, I think that this he was aware of this, and that's why he named his group Mormonism, and also the idea of they're the priests of the Moroni. They're supposed to be prophets of Moroni, and they call themselves elders, and they give themselves titles such as you would see in other ancient religions. And so this idea of this fish, this hungry fish that is hungry for obviously the phallic. It's a phallic religion because it's a fertility religion. It's a fertility cult, and so all fertility cults are based on the same thing. If you give her what she wants, the goddess. If you give the goddess what she wants is your fertility. You fertilize her soil, and you will be rewarded with abundance. You will have many children. You will have many.
Mhm.
Your group will prosper. You will not be defeated by your other fellow men that are all around you because this is your group. Now you've created this. You have your unique way, and you're being blessed because you've gotten together and decided we're going to prosper. And we're going to practice these fertility rituals, and all fertility rituals have always been about sex, and that's just that's how it is. It's all about sex and reproduction. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I don't see anything wrong with it. It's just that we don't realize, most of the time people don't realize what they're really into, what's really happening, of course, with our perceptions, why they're being in that, why they're in that religion, and what it is that they're actually doing. We don't really know what we're actually doing, and that would probably be my biggest argument, that
Yeah.
the false face of the faith, where they're on the one hand desperately denying all other religions and labeling them as evil, so that way they are the only ones who get this attention. We're the only ones. You can only worship God here in my group, and if you're doing it somewhere else, you're wrong. And you're in danger of hellfire. That's the part that I mostly object to about cults and religions, and the need to, obviously there's a desperate need for every cult leader to have himself at the top of the chart, you know,
Yep.
to place themselves in that position of power. And then it's almost as though everything they do from there, everything that they do is an offering between them specifically and God. It's like, look, God, what I've brought to you. 10,000
Yeah.
followers have obeyed me. I bring the offering. I am the crucible point. The sperm is fed uphill to the top of the pyramid, and I'm here at the top of the pyramid, the golden pen, the golden semen, the golden phallus. It
Yeah. Yeah.
rests with me. It rests with me. So you see, there's a competitive aspect.
That's
It's
right.
a necessarily competitive aspect if you want to be that chosen. What they would have considered in our religions, we're given this concept of this chosen one, the golden child, and
Right.
all that. But they're always forever being born, uh, always being born, even though they say it's only once every so many thousands of years. Every child
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
the
It's
potential. We don't know, but
exactly.
we choose. We think we get to choose, and you know, it's meaningless ultimately.
Yeah. It's because like this whole fertility cult thing is it's talking about you fertilizing your own soul with spirit, right? But it can't say that directly, so it's all symbolic, essentially. But when people think that the rituals and the cult itself is the truth, or is the thing to be attained, and they think they're serving an external god, some entity that they're being told. Basically, everything's completely caught up in the maps only, without ever seeing the truth directly, and so they're communicating with a god that they don't see, in a way, and so it's all dealing symbolically with maps, and they're not actually understanding that these are symbols for something that you do within yourself. And so I just want to point something out, because you said the word sex, right? And if you know anything about Roman numerals, an X means 10.
Yes.
So sex means C10, right? Now I just hold this up. C10. I don't know, something's beeping. My table's beeping. I'm just gonna unplug it. That's all right now. It's stopped now. Okay. So if you see 10, 1 and a 0, that's the penis and the yoni, right? Now what happens if you overlay those? You get this symbol here. Oh, it's called the phi symbol.
Right.
Now that phi symbol is not only a symbol for Saturn, but if you look at it, what's next to it? It's almost saying fish.
That's true.
This
good point.
The phi actually means the golden ratio. So it's talking about what happens when you unify with the spirit within yourself.
The golden look. We were talking about the golden pen. I just want to show you, since you're showing notes, let me show you something too. Okay, yep. Here in these notes, for me, comprise a lot of the conversation that we had today. You may not be able to see my text, but you might see. Do you see the medjed fish at the top?
Yeah.
Okay, that is the fish that ate the penis of Osiris. Theoretically, is the medjed fish. This is the
That's hilarious.
This is the Magi fish.
Yep.
To be honest with you, so they're identifying themselves just like the Catholic priests do with a fish, with their fish hat. And
I've got a little drawing here too. Now,
got drawings
I
of
wanted
penises
to talk
here.
about it.
Let me see the whole thing.
Penises.
Okay, you see that? This is if I can find my finger. This is the ox in the rink, because this medjed fish, the medjed or the medhead, is actually something like this in my conception. And you have the ring around the outside. You see the fish around the ring? Well, the fish come around the ring, and this is the bale rite of the sacrifice. And what happens is, it's like they're feeding from, they're getting their food from the soul, like you're describing, around the. I guess they're coming to the ring or to the circle, and we can only get little scraps or tastes of what's of the whole. And they show it in all this imagery, and some of the videos I've gone really far with it and offended plenty of people, because I showed all these images of these fish all around Jesus's feet when he's being essentially what looks like he's been castrated. And so we do this with the circumcision rite, and there's this idea that these fish with these priests are eating, they get to have the first offering. Remember how it was in all of the old stories about God gets the first offering. You give the offering to the God, and then who eats first after you give it to the God? The priests eat it, right? They're the ones who have access to the offering.
Yep.
So they get to eat first of the bounty, and we get what they give us. Essentially, they're going to get the gold. They're going to get our best, and they're going to give it to God themselves. And it's going to help their evolution, ideally, for them. This is the theory, anyways, that they would get the bonus or the benefit. It's the same with the Magi. It's the same with all these groups, that they're at the pinnacle and we're down here somewhere. You can offer your offering. You can offer your golden seed, You keep giving your gold, giving your gold, giving your gold, and it flows upward to these guys, and then they produce. You probably are familiar with that Bach saga to some degree, to where they actually showed the idea was that they would consume the seed of all the soldiers below, and and then that person would produce a higher level of concentrated golden semen, and it would go up the flow until you got somebody at the top who's like, I guess he's chugging gallons of the shit. I don't know. He's getting the best of
Yeah.
the top 10 get best of the top 5. And then there's one guy who gets to consume the pure gold. And now this person is the chosen one. Now, I'm not so sure about all that, but I just like to, it's a great philosophical reference point though, to understand what's happening.
It all is.
Because inside of the fish's mouth, this is what Jesus says and one of the things that's kind of revelatory about these fish, an explanation of the very same Jesus fish that Philip K. Dick was talking about, why he's the one who mentions it, and in his name, love, Phil is love, Philip is love, and Dick. Okay, this is love. This is an idea that this is what love is in this scenario, and the concept is that this fish eats the love of the people. Humans are able to worship God by giving up this love. So, and then the fish is supposed to deliver it to the goddess. So there's a man who's put himself between us and God. I know you don't think of gods and goddesses, but I'm just using these are points of understanding is all they really are. Because why? We need to understand. And when we're dealing with these, like, let's say you said maps. Well, this is the Magi map, but it's never revealed. No one tells this map and lays it out for you. Even if you study with the Magi for a long time, it's no different than any other secret group. You don't know why you're doing it, because they want you to give to them. Ultimately, you're going to be under their authority. And that's the problem with all of these religions, really. It's like someone saying, hey, look, I can put myself in between you and your soul.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be in the middle here. And you better come to me with your questions and advice. And you better take my advice, or you could be out. You know what I mean? This kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yep. It's full externalization.
So cool that you make so cool that you make notes. Look at this. I even have our conversation about coffee already presaged in this. Let's see if I can aim the camera. Over here it is. Here it is.
Oh yeah, I love it. Yeah.
I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but
that's so good.
Here's how you spell oxyrhynchus.
Yeah.
And of course, we have the goat fish of Capricorn, relating to Saturn. So all these little fishies, and you have the underdog and the fish. There's a concept there too. But as far as the there was something else here I wanted to show you before I put it away, which was
you wrote Lord of the Rings as well, yeah.
Oh, Lord of the Rings, and we have Baal. You know what you put on the
Baal ball, right? Eyeball.
Right. Well, you know what you put on upon the cow. Let's say the milk cow, and she gets the skin sore, and you put bag balm. Right? You're familiar with that? It's a type of a balm, right?
No.
So, well, this is okay. Well, it's an ointment that is used to care for the cow. Okay, for when the fissures and cracks in the skin, because let's say the babies, the calves are milking, and so your wife, if you have a child, and your child is nursing, and she gets pain and she gets sore, she too can use this bag balm ointment that you can get in the store. This is a famous old ointment here in the U.S. It's called bag balm. Well, when you see we play the bagpipes, and you see Bilbo Baggins, Bilbo Baggins, all of these concepts are all completely the power in any kind of books and stories and things that we feel like we fall in love with when we read these fictions, it's usually because there's
Yep.
some truth in there. We don't know what it is because we're not been taught to recognize it. But they're
That's
sharing it
right.
with us all the time. It's being shared, but it's like if you or me or anybody tries to come directly and just tell another person the stuff that we want to tell them, it's not going to be received.
Yeah.
But it can be
No.
woven into stories. It can be woven into fairy tales. It could be woven in
That's right.
somewhere, and people won't even know why they're so enchanted with it. But it becomes part of the mythology, so it does something. It must be doing something. It's like a way to remember things that we've learned that we're going to forget. Even you and I, our physical
Definitely.
memory is going to fail, and we're going to forget if we live long enough.
Yeah.
Unless
Yeah.
we're allowed to,
Yeah.
unless she allows us to retain the memory.
Well, yeah. And what do we know about memory? Really, like it comes from her. It comes from her. I mean, mem means water in Hebrew, and so where we think memories are stored are within the waters of our own sea, our own soul, and that's where the fishes swim, is in the sea. And just in regards to like eyeballs, um, what do they term the most holiest book? They call it the Bible.
Yeah.
That's talking about two eyes, two bulls, two eyeballs.
Yeah. Good point.
And
It's
so
like the
what this
can't
represents,
believe
I
it, but
think,
it's the
is
crossing of
right.
the two eyes see into one. Right. They form the vision into one.
Yep. And everything about us is split. Like if you look at your feet, you've got two soles on your feet. What is this symbolic of?
Yeah.
It's because when I talk about this circle observation, I don't think I was making it in the normal world. I think this world is its own separate circle in a way that comes from that original circle. So we've got these like two circles of being. One's the light realm, what we call light realm, which is this realm. Everything's made of light. You can't see anything without light. The other realm's the underworld, which is the circle that I'm talking about, the sea, the primordial sea, the mother. Now these two worlds are normally separated. They're bifurcated, and so they're separated. And so what
Mhm.
happens when you bring these? The camera's funny. When you bring these together, they create the Vesica Pisces,
Yes.
and so they actually create an eclipse, and in the middle of that eclipse is the fish. So what this fish is representing is bringing the two worlds together, or the two towers, into one unified field of observation,
Right.
and that's essentially what happened. That's what the twin towers are a symbol of as well. They the two separate eyes. You think of an eye as an identity, but it's also not eyeball. Brought down to dust, which is what happens when you're having this kind of encounter with the soul, and then you rebirth your whole observable reality, becomes that yoni of creation by merging or eclipsing the two eyes. And that's why the eclipse happens all the time. It's a symbol to remind us that's what we need to do with this world, to eclipse it with our soul so that they become one. Because many of the things that I'm talking about, when I see, I close my eyes and I see a Taurus field, I don't think I can't know. I can't even know that people are real. You know what I mean? But I can't know what other people see. But I assumed they were just like me, and they couldn't. They just saw black, basically. But after, not immediately could I see a Taurus field after this happened. It's taken years for me to even observe this. And it was only after going through like this void experience like 12 months ago that I started noticing the Taurus field when I closed my eyes. So I think there's veils that our soul puts between us so that we can't
Yeah.
see it until we do certain things. And one of these things is actually observing our circle. Because if we never observe it at all, we're never going to understand what the fuck all these symbols are even pointing to. You know, it's just, that's like the starting point. Because like right after it happened,
I mean, it's interesting to say that. I've had people try to teach me to visualize things. I've had people try to get me to visualize. Well, there's visualizations in meditation, but recently I had a friend trying to teach me to visualize the like the tetragrammaton and various, essentially trying to pull me into you know, what is it called? I can't remember the name right now, but it's where you see all the symbols of everything in the Jewish script, Kabbalah.
Yeah.
But they were trying to get me to do that, but ultimately I rejected because I don't want to remember all these forms specifically in order to, because I don't know, I just don't trust it. I have a distrust of, I don't necessarily like what I see in the people who utilize Kabbalah, so I'm not sure I want to be one of them. Maybe there might be something good there that I'm missing out, but I'm choosing to remain ignorant.
You're not missing anything. Yeah, you're not missing anything, man. See, I've never had any meditation experience in my life, and I've never had anyone try to tell me to do anything, except for that one guy who said visualize your spirit. So this means that the most unqualified person in the world can do exactly what I've done, provided the context is right, because I was at a point where the context was right for me, and maybe it won't be the case for other people, but I highly recommend giving it a shot to visualize your spirit, right? But what does that mean? So everyone fucking lays in bed at night. That's what I did. I laid in bed and I essentially said, I'm going to try to go to this happy place. And that means to visualize. So I think the power of that is that once you are there in this place that you're trying to visualize, you're no longer here. So I'll try to explain how the mechanics of that might work. You know how they refer to everyone has an aura. Well, aura is just Taurus without the T. Right? So when I'm saying that we have a Taurus field that's generated from our soul, that's our vehicle for existing in this human body. And because that's our vehicle preceding a body, that means when we visualize ourselves somewhere else in another world and we actually go there, we're no longer in our body anymore. And so essentially the simplicity of visualization is, if you say you want to visualize yourself in a happy place in a forest, right? And you go and lay down in your bed, well, the first thing you're going to encounter is all of the thoughts that are trying to stop you from doing that, right? This is just your normal automatic thoughts that happen. They happen all the time. That'll be your first hurdle, basically, is like, okay, I'm trying to visualize something, but I'm being interrupted by the own automatic process. So the first step will be making a realization about your thought process, is that I can't control my thoughts using thoughts. So when a thought interrupts me, if I have a thought that says, oh, I'm annoyed by that thought, that's adding more thoughts. So the first trick is understanding that you're not going to control thoughts with thought. So that's the first lesson in acceptance, basically, is letting go of the wheel for the first time, so that you can just, if thoughts come, they will, but you're really trying to visualize something. And so the thoughts that do come, you can just kind of observe them happening without trying to interact with them. Once you get to a point where you've stopped doing that, they will go away and you end up in your place of that you're visualizing. Now, the specific place is actually the most least important thing of all. It's just the fact that you're getting outside of your normal cognition is the important thing. And so you hear about people talk about out of body experiences and stuff. They're probably using a similar technique to do the same thing that I did, which was just to transport my auric field outside of the physical body while still maintaining conscious awareness. And once I was in this forest that I visualized, I was well aware I was no longer in my body. And that's a very important thing. Because while you are in your body, I'm not sure you can see this circle. I'm not sure. I haven't tried.
Okay.
So it might have been the fact that I had visualized myself somewhere. My aura or my torus field was then separated from the physical structure that allowed me to actually see the circle that I'm talking about. That being said, it's just about making the connection. So the context of your life is the most important thing. You're not going to be able to make any insights unless you've had the right context to bring you there in a way. Like, many people might see the same circle and they don't have the same understanding that I got from it. You know what I mean? So
Did you literally ask to see your soul? Is that how you ended up there, or did it just appear to you? In other words,
it was only the spirit that I had no idea what a soul was, and it took me a very long time to understand what a soul was. So at that stage, I was only looking to meet the spirit, and I didn't even know I had a soul.
Same thing.
So,
well, I mean, yeah, okay.
yeah.
So you didn't literally ask though. You just wanted, and it happened. Is that how you're describing?
Exactly. My only intention was to go to this happy place to meet my spirit. And it was in that pure innocence that once I got to that place, instantly I saw the spirit. It was exactly, there was no fucking around in any way. Because I think there might be something wrong with me, with my imagination might not be as prominent as other people. So a lot of the things that I might not have much interference with my visual field. I don't know if you've heard of a condition called aphantasia, which is just a word they use to describe people who have difficulty conjuring up images. So if you close your eyes and I asked you to visualize an apple, do you see an apple?
Sure.
You see an actual apple, then you probably don't have aphantasia, right? Well, when I visualize an apple in my mind, I don't see a physical apple. So that's what I mean. My imagination's kind of might not work the same way as other people. So when I landed up in this happy place or whatever, I didn't have any other imagery really going on besides the one I intended to see. And pretty much immediately that circle became the most obvious fucking thing that I could see out of the whole picture. I realized that was my whole existent being, that circle, and everything within it was within me. Because I knew that the spirit wasn't outside of me when I realized that circle was me. There was nothing that could escape me at that point. Anything that can escape that circle is not observable, right? So that was the observation that I had, and then the connection I made from the observation that many other people might not have. Because many people go out of body, right? I don't hear many of them talking about the circle. And that just means to me they might be more interested in the objects that they observe than they are in the meta framework of the stage itself. And that's just because we're all each individually focused on different things. And so
we do hear a lot about. I haven't heard, like you said, out of body experiencers talk about that exactly. But we have a
Mhm.
lot of themes like the circle of life, the idea of the circle being so sacred within most themes, and
Yep.
astrology. So if you look at the astro wheel, there's often a character in the middle of the wheel. And the character it symbolizes King Arthur in the
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
round table, and it symbolizes Jesus in the center of the circle of the 12
Yep.
apostles, postals, whatever they are, and you have
That's right.
this same thing in so many forms, and often the one in the center would theoretically be, well, if you have 12, you might think that the center might be the 13, and it's hidden. And so this 13 is
Mhm.
hidden, and if you go into one of the buildings downtown New York and you go in a nice place and there's no 13th floor, just for an example, and everybody knows this, but maybe we don't. We think it's just from an old wives' tale or something, that this is why everyone
Yeah.
just used to be, all people, even great intelligent builders, were just superstitious. So, this 13 is too dangerous. It's just too dangerous to have a 13th floor
Yep.
type of an idea. Nobody wants to go there. It's this is this the one that's in the center of the circle, that is hidden and sacrificed potentially in some way, like to
It's
manifest the
definitely hidden.
to manifest physicality and to feed
Hmm.
the matrix.
Yep.
Soul goes into feeding it, right? It's like
Well, I think it's the very source of what the soul is emanating from. So that single point is like this. It's actually a seed of new creation. So our soul gets. You know how they say in the beginning was the breath or the word. Well, the word spirit itself means to blow. So if you think about like you're an infinite spirit that is formless and you want to create a soul, you blow a bubble, right? And all the air's coming through the seed hole of that bubble. And then what I'd consider the circle is like the rim of the bubble that gets blown.
that's what your image means. The bubblegum
Yeah.
image.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Well, I
never
didn't
would
know
have
at the
got.
time, but yeah.
I was wondering, what the hell is he trying to say with this thing? This bubblegum. That's fascinating. That really is. We have this idea
Yeah.
of. Well, today is Friday the 13th. I had like, I thought I had some sort of a feeling about this date. Something was going to occur. Maybe it was just this conversation, to be honest,
Maybe.
because that's
Yeah.
all that's occurred for me today. I slept half the day, didn't feel well, and literally have done nothing today except this conversation. So
Well,
for
you've
me, I
done
guess
well
that's
with the
what
second.
that's what it is, because it was about fire.
Hmm.
I was thinking about, the image was about this guy who died today. It was John Hurt, the actor,
Okay.
because I'm a
Yeah.
John, and I saw him in the
Yeah.
film, but I was watching it the night that I felt this way. I kept seeing numbers flashing at me, 6, 7, and then over
Wow.
and over, and
I
then the
love that
six,
number.
7, and then on the same, like literally at the same time, I was getting this. We were watching this show called Goliath, and it showed this character. It was like a David Lynch scene, a season of this show called Goliath, and it was very Lynchian. I noticed it right away, and I was trying to tell Patricia, like, look, this is like, they're doing something strange in this, because they're echoing David Lynch here, and what it was, and you have this character that all of a sudden appeared, and it was John Hurt. I knew he was dead. He's been dead for a while, but then I was watching it. I was fixated. All of a sudden, I felt like I was meant to see something here, and he looked a lot like, um, he has blonde hair, or he had blonde hair. He was an older man at
Mhm.
this time before he died. He looked a lot like Trump to
Yeah.
me, and he was behaving very narcissistically, and he was a total asshole, and he seemed to be very vengeance oriented. And I remember a lot of the old interviews there where I saw Trump, where when he was talking about, he essentially loves to take revenge. This is why people are afraid of him, because he had this reputation that anyone who crossed him or whatever, they would eventually pay for it.
Mhm.
So this is an interesting aspect to why I thought, okay, this is representing Trump here, and his whole face was burned on one side in the film. He had this big burn scar on the side of his face that they had shown John Hurt with. So I was like, oh wow! I had to stop. I kept stopping the frame and taking a photo. I was like, I need to remember this for some reason.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I looked up. So then, when the show was over, I looked up the actor John Hurt, and I saw that he had died 4 years ago today, on March the 13th. So then I said, okay, maybe something's going to happen on the 13th. Maybe this is why I keep getting all the 6 7s and all this stuff. And the 6 7 was about the cutting off of the phallic,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
symbolism of this thing I was seeing over and over. It was about this, like, you're going to sacrifice the phallic in order to wear the crown. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
guy who loses his phallus,
Yeah.
something is born inside of him. Actually, he has unprotected sex with a very strange woman, and he becomes impregnated. He's impregnated with something, and it emerges through his phallic, and essentially it just explodes. Right? There's a horror movie,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but it repeated 6 7, and it showed him they put on a laurel crown on his head like the bull, like Baal, and
Yeah. Laurel.
so that's the Caesar, the crown of Caesar, Kaiser. So I
Yeah.
recognize the symbolism. I know it had some kind of meaning. I
It
don't know
is
what kind of
extremely
repercussions
meaningful.
it has, but
I've got like several notes here. All of these little details are very symbolically so amazing. Like 6 7, for example, if you think about those two words, they relate to sex and sword or sever. So 7, sever,
oh yeah,
sever
that's
with a
right.
sword. So you're talking about severing a phallus, 6 7, right? And then you're talking about a death of the false, or the phallus could be a symbol for the false,
Good, good point.
right? And so if you add 6 and 7 together, what number you get? You get 13. That's the number of the death card in tarot. And so symbolically, we're in the month of Mary. We're in the month of March here, which is Ma for Mary, or and then you've got ch. So what's ch? Ch. That's the sound of the fire entering the water. And symbolically, the spirit is a fire. It's a living fire. It's a living flame. And so when the water enters
Mm.
the mother, the sea, it's like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I
March, we're in
like that.
March.
It's a cooling the water, cooling the fire, right?
Yep.
The burning.
Yep. And so that's also Laurel. My mum's name's Lorenz, so I call her Laurel, which is pretty funny. I'm just a big fan of that. Um,
My
yeah,
son,
if you wanted to keep
my
it.
son
Yeah.
carries the name Harrison.
Oh,
Harry's son.
wow. That's incredible.
It's
That's
Sean
incredible.
Harrison.
Mm. Like shone, like shine, like light, shone,
Yeah,
shine.
exactly. Yeah, that is true.
And
That's right.
Hari, I think Hari is another word that means like the day and refers to sun as well. So it's pretty funny, man.
Definitely
It's,
refers to the sun. The sun. It's
yeah,
heavily implied the sun in his name. I didn't realize it and didn't intend it, but that's how it turned out.
yeah. You said something earlier as well about the 13 being hidden. Now, what I didn't mention in my story, I saw the circle and the spirit at that time. I never saw the Bindu.
Mm.
So that was hidden to me up until about 6 months ago. So there is an unveiling process, it doesn't all happen at once. But what I just wanted to add to the Bindu, I call it a fissure, like a breach where the spirit blows into it.
I see.
Well, what do they call Jesus? They call Jesus the fisher of men, right?
There's the Fisher King. I think
Yep.
that would be
And that's the
appropriate. The
crown.
Fisher King. And that's how when you said fisher, I thought you were talking about a fisher of men. So, but
Yep.
it's amazing how etymology speaks, and people will correct you and tell you, well, that's not totally unrelated word. It's in the sound.
That's right.
Sounds contain, if you're saying the same word, and the sound must contain the meaning of the word, because we have a different ideology of what each one means, but yet they're nevertheless true.
Yep.
So you might have 100 different meanings for a word, and someone's intention doesn't matter. Your intention of the word doesn't matter. It's what it says to me and what I'm ready to receive, what the other person is able to receive.
That's right. And there's just one element to this Fisher thing, because it is a recent thing for me to see it. One thing I observed soon after that are crosses. So I actually see a double cross. So one cross is like a normal orientation and the other one's a diagonal. Now, what I realized these crosses represent the poles, the north and south. And so the word north, symbolically it represents our head, and the south would represent the underworld, right? And so these are like, how I said the two poles of Earth represented by like an 8 with a line in the middle, the magnetic poles.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's kind of like what's happening in our soul, but because we're thinking we can only perceive two-dimensionally, what I'm beginning to realize is like the soul's a sphere in a way, and so these two poles are represented by these crosses. And they create this symbol, which I can see this symbol here. Can you see that 8-spoked wheel?
Yes.
All right. That 8-spoked wheel is called the Dharma Chakra, and they refer to it as the wheel of Dharma. They referred to there were 2 titles that were expected to happen with the Buddha. He was either going to become the king of the world and rule the world, or he was going to turn the wheel. And so this wheel actually represents the crown, and it's within all of our souls, right? Yep. This wheel represents the crown. It's also in occult literature, like Aleister Crowley, they call this, which was termed by a magician called John Dee, they called that the final threshold was called Koronzon. And so that's what they called the demon of the void. But what it's really referring to is the crown zone. This is the crown zone that's at the very core of our soul. And it's almost like the last point of it's where the entry happens. So it's like the gateway. And if you go beyond that gateway, you would be like you're going transcending beyond the soul itself, basically. So this relates to the crown symbology that you find pretty much everywhere. So the Kabbalists call this crown, they call it Keta, but you can really call it K for king. I'm just thinking of this now. K for king, and then ether, which is what they call the spirit. So the koronzon actually just means, koron means crown, and zon means zone. So it's the zone of the crown, which is a it's a location of your soul. It's the very center of your soul, and it's the very fissure hole that like the spirit streams through to blow the bubble, basically. So why this is important is because I just find it interesting that I'm not really. When I looked into what the Buddhists refer to this eight-spoked wheel as, they say that you either rule that wheel or you turn the wheel. And so there's these two symbols, basically, for like, what do you want to do with all this? You finally, I guess, reclaiming the ground of your soul, but what do you want to do with it? Do you want to now rule the wheel, or do you want to turn it? And like, what does it actually mean to turn the wheel? And that's something I've been contemplating a lot lately, as to what would that actually mean. And that might mean, for me, I see the fact of where we're at today, as most people are in a kind of spiritual darkness, and I see that as a side effect of what we would call the Kali Yuga, which is the Dark Age, which is a normal part of the cycle. It's not like it's evil or anything. It's just part of the cycle of existence. And so I think we remain in this state of dark ages until we turn the wheel and enter a new age. And so I think this wheel is actually not just represented by the eight-spoked wheel in Buddhism, but it's the very symbol of what Mithra is as well. So Mithra is slaughtering the bull. The bull, we're talking about a torus. It's the torus field is our projected reality from the soul. And so Mithra's basically become the axis, or he's essentially symbolically representing, like, I've slayed the phallus or the false self, and I've come to the ground of my being, which at the very source of our soul is this eight-spoked wheel. That's the wheel that turns the entire machine. And right at the center of this wheel is where you would say the unmoved mover lives there. That's what it kind of represents, is that the wheel is turning, but right at the center of the wheel there's no motion at all. But at this point of no motion is also the point of where all movement is sourced from, essentially. And so once you get to the point of revealing this eight-spoked wheel within your soul, you become the king of your own soul, the lord of the soul, the Dom. So I think that's something being referenced here with this crown, is what I would represent as the crown itself. So another interesting thing about the crown, like the word itself, because if we think about our soul as a circle, the only number that's represented by a circle is the number 0. The number 0 is also referred to as naught. And if you think about how that pertains to Egyptian mythology or other Egyptians call the god who bends herself over and wears the stars on her body, she's called Nut or Nut, and she's essentially this symbol for, at least for me, as a 0. And if we look at the word crown, it's spelt CROWN, and so if you just take those three letters, CRO, you say it out loud, it says zero, zero, zero. And so when we think about a crown, it's the 0, 1. So CRO is 0 and WN is 1. 0 and 1 makes the 10. It makes the phi or the 10. And so this is essentially numerical mapping of the actual hardware of our soul itself. Because in a lot of symbology, that point in the middle is representative of the 1, basically, or the spear, because it's like a pole. If we look at it as a dot, we're looking from a top-down 2D perspective, but the pole itself is actually a line. So that's the 1 and the 0 is encoded in the word crown itself.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very astute observation. I hadn't connected that.
Yeah, like man. Fucking
crow, crown. That brings me back to something I wanted to mention to you earlier. When we were talking about the fish again. It's just a recent observation, but we were talking about the Jesus fish, and there was a quote. Jesus said that someone asked him, supposedly, do you pay the tax? Remember, Jesus says, render unto Caesar that which belongs to Caesar. And another one, they said, do you pay the tax to in other words, to the church? You know, you're paying the tithe or whatever. And he says, go, he tells his apostles, go forth, go, and you will find it in the fish's mouth. You will find the coin or the crown in the fish's mouth. And in my long attempts at analyzing that iPet goat video, which you may have seen some of my videos talking about, that iPet goat video, it was the symbolism of the crossroads of the eclipses in America, the Great American eclipses. And at the crossroads, we saw 2 presidents. Our President Bush on one of the crossroads, the one for Texas, the one that happened in Texas here. We're forming the Aleph, okay, with these eclipses. You've probably seen it, but okay. Yeah, so we see Bush standing on the Texas. He represents Texas. He comes from that state. That's his representation. And so, and then Obama, he morphs into Obama, and then Obama stands on the crossroads of Illinois, where Obama is from that region. He's from the District of Illinois and representing like the Chicago Bulls, right? So we have the bull there, and they're at each one of the crossroads is the most powerful, because that was the main one of the 2 great American eclipses. And then there was what they've labeled, because they were total solar eclipses. And the other one was a ring of fire eclipse that formulated the one over the Alamo, Texas.
Okay.
Literally that region, that famous region of the Alamo, and into the Corpus Christi, right through Corpus Christi, Texas, and into the Gulf of Mexico, into the Gulf of America. So that all had me riveted for so long. But the bull, or Obama in that sense, standing on that eclipse, exactly in the position he was standing on, a crown, a coin. And that is the coin found in the mouth of the Jesus fish. In other words, the church, it all had to do with communion. And
we lost you. I lost you for a second, but you're back now.
Okay, well, when I was just left off, I was just saying it had to do, and my interpretation of it had to do with the communion, because it shows he's going into a fish's mouth in the first place. The beginning of the video, which I've never made a video actually finally explaining it, but the character shows the Christ character being swallowed, going down someone's throat. And that someone is finally revealed at the end. I've never heard anyone explain it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's revealed at the end, because when the church, there's a church which collapses at the end of the video, And you see that behind the church was a mouth that reminds me very much of the mouth of a rockfish or a sucker fish, like a carp or something. But it has this
Yeah.
mouth. And so, Jonah was swallowed by the whale, this thing. Well, he's swallowed, and you see all these fish jumping into this boat. He's on the boat, which is shaped in the form of the dragon or the Pluto, the dog, Cerberus, Kerberos, the black dog, and
Yeah.
he's going down the Nile. He's going down the Nile. This lets you know this is part of how I came to realize that it was all about the ancient Egyptian mythology. In fact, when we're talking about Jesus, this is how I was able to connect between the Jesus fish and the Medjed fish and the Magi, which are the Medjay fish.
Mm.
They're all the same groups. They're policing religion. And sure enough, the ancient Magi were no better than any others. In fact, they're the same. They're sorcerers, which all the priests are representative of sorcerers trying to, let's say, kind of like steal the harvest and gather followers and live a life of ease and luxury and control and manipulate. And they're the best spies. These same groups are all spies. And they're the ones who wait at the gates, the listeners at the gates, to find out what's going on politically and constantly monitor and manipulate and win this war game between, famously it's Persia, the Prince of Persia, this concept that this is where the devil, their idea of the devil lay in ancient times very often, compared with, of course, the good ones over here that portray themselves as the good guys, and the other one are the bad guys. Whatever you do, stay away from those guys because they're all competing with one another. They're just talking about their competition. Really, is all they are. It's like Coke versus Pepsi type of deal. And the fish, the coin in the fish's mouth, that's what Obama is standing on. A lot of people have theorized, oh, well, this is a crown and it means such and such. I'm telling you right now that that is the coin that Jesus talked about in the fish's mouth. That's why we saw the black and white striped Jesus fish jump up into the boat as he was on the black boat riding toward his doom. And as he came out exited from the digestive system of this, for nothing else, have you ever seen the images where you see Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan in Native American artwork? Because these were American eclipses. So I talk about America here for a minute. And the American god is Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan. And he's always shown as a serpent swallowing a dude. There's a guy he's swallowing someone. So here was our religion. We swallow Jesus. We eat Jesus every time we go to church. We eat a wafer in the shape of the soul that you describe, a circular wafer very often. Eat that, you drink the blood, pretend that you just ate a piece of the body and the flesh and blood of Jesus. And that's exactly what this video was describing. Jesus goes through the digestive system and comes out the other end. And you see the church falls down and the whole is revealed as though perhaps that barrier is coming down, not just for you and me, but for many. Maybe the barrier or the wall that's between, people think, maybe they think that because I have named my channel about Magi and that means that I have become one of them, or no, it doesn't mean that. It just means I used it the same way I used every one of these religions and every one of these religious studies. I used it to learn something. And I just happened that I learned some of the secrets that were very well kept here in the West with the Eastern studies. And that's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're meant to do. Learn what you can. But if these walls if it comes down as it depicts, the church, it shows the church crumbling. It's a very, it's an elaborate, beautiful church, and it looks a lot like St. Patrick's Cathedral. Some people have tried to say that that's St. Patrick's Cathedral. There's all these I don't mean to call them doomsayers, but they're always trying to forecast the end of the world because, that's what's in the scripture, and that's what they think. That's what people have been told. Revelations mean, but a revealing doesn't have to be. A revealing does not have to be death. Although it might be that we're going to burn and become ash and the phoenix is about to be reborn. It could be. I live here in Phoenix. My son has that in his name, Jude Phoenix. And I know that there's a reason for it all. The reason I was brought here, because I'm not from here. I was brought here and I had to stay here. I had no choice. And it felt like it has always felt like I have to be here for whatever reasons. Not that
Yep.
I think I'm special. Not that I think
No.
not. I don't like to say it like that. It's just that's my story. I have to live or die here, whatever's meant to happen.
So
And I
perfect.
just accept it instead of trying to. I was. Everybody wants to go off and try to find their escape route. I doubt there's an escape route.
Yep.
Whatever's going to happen is going to happen to us, or to you or me, or whoever, individually or all at once, whatever. We know we're going to die anyways. There's no escape from that. Our physical is coming to an end. So why should we spend our life prepping so we can escape some kind of apocalypse when there's no escape? But at the same time, I don't want to focus on that. I would rather focus on the joy of living while I'm alive, all the good things, all the positive things, all the love that's here. I can focus on how evil the world is all day long, and all that's going to do is make me more and more angry and miserable. Might as well just focus on the joy and the good things and the love that I feel for others
Yep.
and the love that we're able to receive and take it as part of the picture, the part of the plan that we don't still understand, of course, completely. But
Yep.
yeah,
No, we can't see it all, but we can at least learn as we go. It reveals itself to us as we go through it as well, And there is certainly a destiny, and the reason you're in Phoenix is the same reason I'm in this place called Moana. It's
Moana.
not exactly, yeah. It's not something I enjoy. I don't enjoy being here, but I know I have to be here, and it's almost like a responsibility. Like I'm needed here. I don't know why. I just am. But we'll
Do you know
wrap
the
up
coordinates?
soon.
Well, let me ask
Not
you about
yet.
Moana.
Not yet. Yeah.
Don't know the coordinates of Moana?
Not yet. No. Yeah. I'll have to look
Okay.
them up. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, let me
Pretty
know if you
cool.
find it. Or I might look it up later.
Definitely. I'll wrap up soon after this, but the things you've said are actually very important topics that I'd love to just expand upon what you were saying about the end of the world. It's not an actual destruction of the world in the way we would think. What it is it's a revelation of the method. And um, that's been hidden for a long time by all of the religious institutions and magi and all that. They're the keepers of secrets, but they're also the enforcers of darkness because they work for the same boss. And when we're in the dark ages, the people who know we're in the dark ages, someone has to be the bad guy. And it might actually be the more enlightened ones that are playing that role because they have um, a bit more knowledge as to the reasoning behind it. And so I see the destruction of these institutions as really just the revelation of the truth within people's own souls that makes them crumble because they become redundant. And I think that's the very core topic of what we're talking about here is what I'm discussing here is basically the revelation of the method as I see it. And if this becomes common knowledge, then the entire world will have no choice but to completely rearrange what we think of as religion. Um, and that old way of looking at things will just crumble, and it's not a negative thing. It will be the best thing that's ever happened to humanity, and I don't think it's the first time it's happened. I think this is part of the cycle that takes place. That's why we have something called a golden age. It just means a time where people are in gnosis and they get to enjoy what that means for their reality. Um,
Yeah.
and on that fish, like you're talking about a black and white fish, man, and PKD brings up zebra.
It's a
Well, they're
zebra
talking
fish.
about
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
They're talking
Yes.
about the same thing here. the dark world and the light world, they merge to create the black and white.
Mm.
And that's the Vesica Pisces. The black and white Vesica is the two worlds merged, eclipsed into one single world. And it's just talking about our soul. And so when that happens within you, that is an Armageddon. That is a total apocalypse of the world that you knew, and it gets totally replaced in a way. And the eclipses. So these eclipses are, because you've just helped me make a connection that I've not been able to understand. So you know how I said I didn't see that center point at first, and then it's only like 6 months, whatever time I observed it. I'm only connecting now what this means because of you've just brought up the eclipses. So you know how I talk about there's a double cross, an 8-spoked wheel? Mm-hmm. Well, each cross represents a pole, north and south, but these weren't instantly observable for me. But I think what's happened is, like, when the eclipses take place, it creates the opportunity for me to unveil that within my observation. So it's like these physical eclipses that are taking place are like opening doorways for you to see something new within your own soul, essentially.
I'm just going to show you images while you talk.
Yeah.
Keep on going.
Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. So if we look at the word north, if you read the word north backwards, it says throne.
Yes, throne. That's right.
Throne. Yeah.
I just want to show you some images. What I think of things that I've written in these books over the years as we talk, because you're hitting on these notes of the Ophiuchus, Phi.
Yeah, wow. Ophiuchus, right?
Yeah.
So you've got
there's so many. Right. I mean, I love to see because I get excited when I saw your notes. Do you know I've compiled these books over years, endless note taking, and there's nothing you can do.
We're gonna have to share them.
If I find somebody to share with on it, it's so cool. It'd be so cool.
I've got some fucking notes, bro. I wanted to show
you got songs. You got songs, and I wanted to. That's exciting to me because I'm a poet. Originally, I was a poet long ago.
Well,
go ahead, show me whatever you want.
Well, this was like what I'll do is, like, I'll bring one object into contemplation and then I'll start playing with that. So this was the letter A or Aleph or Ox.
Yeah.
And so I was able to, like, provide all these correspondences.
Very much the same thing I do. You're doing almost the same. You know how I was saying it was so interesting how we met recently? You're literally doing the same type of note taking that I do. I just sit there and think about something and then doodle on it and see what comes, Yep.
That's child's play. Fantastic. That's Aeon's play, brother. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic, bro.
Yep. So we'll wrap up here, brother, because I don't know how long we've been talking about. This has been epic chat. It's starting to get dark in my room a little bit.
Yeah. It was another marathon, dude. Well, I appreciate your time and stuff because I didn't think I had energy for it. I never thought I'd had energy to go this long. So if you hadn't kept it extremely interesting and allowed for breaks and everything, because that's what we need to do when you're going to do one of these big, long conversations. You need to alternate taking a break. And so whenever you need to, just do it and let the other person carry on. But we could do it. We could shorten it because a lot of times people, when I've done these really long ones, they don't want to come back because they're afraid that they don't have the energy for another huge, long talk. Sure. But it's perfect time.
Well, if you wanted to explore a specific topic, we could maybe do that. And if we wanted to keep it short, and that way we kind of have a guide rail to go by. But everything you said was just triggering organically things that I'm interested in. So it was like we're playing a very harmonic song together, which I appreciate. It's very rare that we have conversations like this in our lives. So a lot of gratitude there, my brother. So thank you.
Yeah, you too. I mean, I was thinking about this, like, Jesus, maybe we should have just had this topic off camera, but at the same time, why not? You know.
Why
So,
not? I've actually got people are actually interested. I shared a little bit of what we talked about with some people, and they said they want to see more. So I'm going to share this with them as soon as it's available. I think they'll be very excited to watch us
beautiful. Well, I'll watch
have a
for your
chat. Yeah.
channel. When you if you post it up on your channel, then I'll link it on my channel, and then that way,
Perfect. Yeah,
kind of
I'll add you as a collaborator. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good, my friend.
Awesome, brother.
Have a good day.
All the love, brother. Thank you very much. See ya.
Bye.